Chapter 3484. Upon hearing her words, the Black Lotus Lord's aura suddenly turned gloomy. The entire cave abode's aura turned bone-chilling. The oppressive and violent aura howled wildly. The next moment, the Black Lotus Lord's figure flashed. He leaned forward and grabbed Yun Shueqin's neck with one hand, lifting her up. A sinister voice filled with murderous intent rang in her ears. "Do you think that I'm no match for Shenyuan Mo's?" Her neck was choked, and her feet were lifted off the ground. A powerful aura enveloped her, making her feel as if the aura of death was so close to her. She grabbed his hand tightly with both hands and opened her mouth, trying her best to breathe in fresh air. She wanted to open her mouth to beg for mercy, but she couldn't utter a single word. Just when she thought she would be strangled to death, she felt her body being violently flung, and she fell heavily onto the ice bed. This Lord's Black Lotus just happens to need some primordial yin qi to supplement it. As this Lord's subordinate, you have this obligation. You can't refuse. He said in a gloomy voice as he strode towards the ice bed. With a wave of his hand, a black aura shot out. It split into 4 auras and wrapped around Yun Shueqin's hands and feet, fixing her on the ice bed in a shape. "No. No. Please don't." Yun Shueqin cried and begged in panic. However, she did not know that the more she cried and begged, the more she refused. This made the Black Lotus Lord even more violent. "You will be grateful to me because I can make you stronger." As the Black Lotus Lord spoke, he came to the ice bed and reached out to grab her clothes. Yun Shueqin's clothes were torn to shreds and scattered all over the ground. A sharp scream echoed in the cave abode. The black-robed cultivators outside did not know what was happening inside. They were still discussing in low voices how to deal with Fengjiu and the rest. The next evening, the sovereign of Tongtian unexpectedly came to this forest and accurately found the cave abode. "Where is your sovereign?" In mid-air, the sovereign of Tongtian narrowed his eyes and stared at the people below. "It's the sovereign of Tongtian." A black-robed cultivator recognized him and immediately said, "The sovereign of Tongtian, our sovereign is in the cave abode." As he spoke, a black-robed cultivator quickly entered the cave abode to report. The cultivator who entered the immortal's cave went inside but didn't see his master and Yun Shueqin in the outer room. Puzzled, he went to the inner room. There was a stone door there, so he reported from outside. "Master, the sovereign of Tongtian is outside. Let him in." The sovereign of Tongtian, the black-robed cultivator, the sovereign of Tongtian, the sovereign of Tongtian. And Tongtian. Tongtian and Tongtian after he had Tongtian, Tongtian. And Tongtian, Tongtian, Tongtian. Tongtian, Tongtian, and Tongtian. And then, Tongtian and Tongtian. He and Tongtian, Tongtian ing. The moment he finished speaking, he put on his clothes and walked out. The stone door closed again, leaving Yun Shueqin lying there motionless. She stared blankly at the ceiling of the cave abode. After a long time, her eyes moved and she slowly sat up. She curled up into a ball and leaned against the corner of the room as tears silently flowed down her face. Chapter 3485. Sovereign Tongtian and the Black Lotus Lord sat opposite each other at the stone table in the outer room, sizing each other up. When Sovereign Tongtian saw the Black Lotus Lord's strength, his eyes narrowed. He did not dare to underestimate him. The Black Lotus Lord had grown from an inconspicuous cultivator to a God-King level expert. There was no doubt about his strength. Furthermore, before he came, he had obtained some information about the Black Lotus Lord. Just like how he had not expected Fengjiu and Shenyuan Mo's to become God-King level experts in such a short period of time, he had never taken the Black Lotus Lord seriously. However, from the moment he became a God-King and stood on the same level as him, he was no longer able to overlook him. He could no longer overlook him. "I have long heard of the sovereign Tongtian's great name. Now that I have met you, you are indeed extraordinary, the Black Lotus Lord said politely. The Black Lotus Lord is even more impressive. In a short period of time, you have reached such heights. You are indeed extraordinary, the sovereign Tong Tian said. He smiled and said, I have fought with Fengjiu and the others several times, but I have not been able to gain the upper hand. Now that I have the Black Lotus Lord's help, they will not dare to be so arrogant. Upon hearing this, the Black Lotus monarch took a sip of the tea in front of him and said, I heard that they are preparing to get married. I wonder what plans does sovereign Tong Tian have. Fengjiu and the others are friends with the Black Tortoise Lord. Furthermore, the Black Tortoise Lord's son has become the adopted son of Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mo's. If we attack them, the Black Tortoise Lord will not stand by and do nothing. They have 3 God King level experts, so I do not dare to act rashly. Furthermore, in my opinion, even if we attack them, we cannot choose to do so while they are getting married. The sovereign Tong Tian could not hide the murderous intent in his eyes when he mentioned Fengjiu and the others. No matter how much he did not want to see them get married, he had to admit that he could not attack them while they were getting married. It would be unwise to attack them at that time. Since it's not suitable to make a move at that time, why don't we do it half a month after their wedding? During that time, those who went to congratulate him should have already left, Master Black Lotus said. A dim light flashed across his gloomy eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Are you planning to make your move in the lower realm? Or the upper realm? Sovereign Tong Tian asked. Whether it's the upper realm or the lower realm, they've already spread their spiritual energy all over the place. If we attack them here, it'll only be beneficial to them. As the Black Lotus Lord spoke, he narrowed his eyes viciously. Since their forces are all over the place, and they have so many supporters and followers, then we shall eliminate all of their supporters. Let them fight on their own. Sovereign Tongtian's expression changed slightly as he asked, I wonder what Sovereign Black Lotus has in mind. How could it be so easy to cut off the wings of Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mo's? However, from his words, could it be that he had a brilliant plan? There's no point in talking about it now. When the time comes, we'll know. With that, he looked at Sovereign Skirich. I want to find the Lord of Demonic Cultivators here. Chapter 3486. Sovereign Tong Tian paused as he looked at Sovereign Tong Tian. He was no match for Fengjiu in the past and it's even more impossible now. What's the point of looking for him? He was the sovereign of a region and had his own territory. To be honest, he did not want to be associated with the Demon Lord. Moreover, he did not think that the Demon Lord could have grown so powerful in the past few years that Fengjiu was wary of him. Since the Demon Lord was useless, what was the point of having him? You just need to find him. I will know if he is useful or not, Sovereign Tong Tian said. Lord Black Lotus said arrogantly. It was obvious that he did not take Sovereign Tong Tian seriously. Sovereign Tongtian's face darkened when he heard this. He looked at Sovereign Tong Tian and laughed coldly. Sovereign Tong Tian, you sure talk big. Do you think that since I am your subordinate, I should listen to your orders? He was a dignified sovereign, the overlord of a region, and had been in a high position for many years. It was naturally impossible for him to be ordered to do things by a sovereign who had just become a divine king. If he really nodded and agreed today, wouldn't he have to listen to him in the future? How would he have any face left? Sovereign Tong Tian smiled coldly and looked at Sovereign Tong Tian with a sharp gaze. I have never seen Sovereign Tongtian's strength before. Why don't we have a spar? A trace of surprise flashed across Sovereign Tongtian's eyes. Sovereign Tong Tian, who had just become a supreme god, dared to challenge him. Did he think that Sovereign Tong Tian was stronger than him? His probing gaze fell on him, sizing him up, but he couldn't see anything. However, he knew that both of them were powerhouses at the level of divine kings. They didn't have any friendship in the past, so there was only a conflict of interest. They wanted to deal with Feng Jiu and Xianyuan Mo's, and they would definitely join forces in the future. Since that was the case, one of them had to listen to the other. Otherwise, there would be many such incidents in the future. After thinking for a while, Sovereign Tong Tian stood up and said, "All right. I would like to see what Sovereign Tong Tian is capable of." He wanted to see what made Sovereign Tong Tian so arrogant. "Please." Sovereign Tong Tian stood up and gestured for Sovereign Tong Tian to leave. Sovereign Tong Tian clasped his hands behind his back and walked out. Monarch Black Lotus also followed them outside. When they arrived outside, the cultivators automatically made way for them. However, when they thought that their master was going to send Monarch Skirich away, they heard their master's voice. "All of you, back off. I want to spar with Sovereign Tong Tian." Hearing this, the black-robed cultivators couldn't help but exchange glances. Sparring with Sovereign Tong Tian. Could their master win? Although they were suspicious, they still retreated far away. In a spar between God King experts, a single pressure was enough to make them kneel on the ground. They naturally did not dare to appear within the range of their pressure. The Sovereign of Sky Reaching and the Black Lotus Lord came to the center of the clearing. As their auras surged, the two of them dashed out like lightning. The airflow in the air was as sharp as a blade. Swish! Who? Chapter 3487. Yun Shuexin, who was originally in the cave, had come out at some point. She was dressed in a loose black robe and her ink-black hair was hidden under the hood of her black robe. Her aura was gloomy and no one noticed her even when she appeared in front of the cave. Everyone's attention was on the two people who were fighting. Because of this, no one noticed that Wanyan Shursan was silently approaching the source of that aura. He didn't dare to get too close because the other party was a divine king. He had to carefully conceal his aura so that they wouldn't notice him. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to escape if he was discovered. However, when he came to a tree and looked ahead, he couldn't help but be secretly shocked. The black-robed cultivators in front had all retreated. There were about 100 of them and they were not weak. Moreover, in the middle of the forest, there were two figures fighting at an extremely fast speed. Powerful auras and auras emanated from their bodies. Just looking at it was already very frightening. Was this the power of a divine king? Who was it that was fighting here? He thought for a moment and looked at the black-robed cultivators. With a thought, he took out a black robe from the space and put it on. He also took out a thin mask made of human skin and put it on. Then, he quietly approached the black-robed cultivators and blended in with them. The black-robed cultivators were all watching the two people fighting and didn't notice anyone sneaking in. However, they couldn't help but feel a little worried when they saw that their master and Sovereign Tong Tian had been fighting for a long time without a clear victor. Do you think our master can defeat Sovereign Tong Tian? After all, our master has just become a divine king. Sovereign Tong Tian has been a divine king for many years. Our master will definitely win. Our master is stronger than Sovereign Tong Tian. Hearing their words, Wanyan Shursan, who was mixed in with them, was slightly surprised. Because the two people who were fighting were extremely fast, he couldn't see their faces clearly. Therefore, he could only see them fighting there. It did not look like a battle to the death. After all, although each of their moves was filled with killing intent, they did not intend to kill each other. They still held back a little. The two combatants seemed to be evenly matched in strength, but if one were to say who was stronger, in his opinion, Sovereign Tong Tian seemed to be stronger. Sovereign Tong Tian gathered wind in his palms and was about to send Black Lotus Lord flying. However, a black aura suddenly surged around Black Lotus Lord and a black lotus appeared on his forehead. The aura around him suddenly grew stronger. Hiss! Look! Our master's black lotus has appeared on his forehead. Our master's aura is stronger than before. Our master will win. Our master will win. Our master will win. The black-robed cultivators looked at the scene in front of them and couldn't help but wave their hands and cheer excitedly. When Wanyan 13 saw that everyone was clenching their fists and cheering, he shouted along with them. He stared at the Lord of Black Lotus in front of him and thought to himself, as Feng 9 expected, the Lord of Black Lotus has really become an expert at the Divine King realm. Moreover, his Black Lotus looks very strange. Chapter 3488. Bang! With a loud thud, Sovereign Tong Tian was sent flying. His body slammed into a tree, and the tree broke apart with a loud crack. Just as he steadied himself and was about to counterattack, he suddenly felt a bone-piercing cold aura in his body. That aura inexplicably made him shudder, and the aura in his body could not be mobilized at that moment. How is it? Black Lotus Lord asked as he stopped attacking. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked at Sovereign Tong Tian, who was staring blankly at his own hands. What is that? What is that black lotus on your forehead? Sovereign Tong Tian asked with a frown. He felt that the black lotus was a little strange. He looked at Sovereign Tong Tian and said in a low voice, "It is the ancient black lotus of destruction. Even Fengjiu is afraid of my black lotus. Even if you are a supreme god like me, you will not be able to withstand the power of my black lotus." Sovereign Tong Tian couldn't help but be slightly shocked when he heard this. That power was so powerful. He looked at his own hands. The feeling gradually dissipated. He channeled power into his palms to force the bone-chilling aura out of his body. Only then did he feel better. Wanyan Shirsan, who was mixed in the crowd, was also shocked when he heard that. If the power of the Black Lotus was really so powerful, then Feng Jiu and the others would really be in trouble. Once they fought against it, it was hard to say who would win. It seemed that he had to quickly inform her about this matter so that she could be prepared in advance. Just as he was thinking, he saw the two people in front of him talking as they walked. "I will send people to find the Devil Lord. You said before that we will attack them half a month after they get married. Do you have a detailed plan?" Sovereign Tong Tian was already thinking of sneaking away when they were not paying attention. When he heard this, he could not help but follow the black-robed cultivators. How were they going to deal with Fengjiu and the rest? Since he had encountered them, he had to listen carefully. This mainland is already Shenyuan Mose's territory. Since that is the case, let's go to your place. We will discuss it when we get there, Sovereign Tong Tian said. Sovereign Tong Tian thought for a moment and nodded. All right, it will be more convenient for us to leave together. Thus, the Black Lotus monarch glanced at Yun Shueshin, who was standing in front of the cave residence, and instructed, "You, Yun Shueshin, remember what I told you. Put away the ice bed here. When I find a suitable place, I will build a palace." His voice paused, and his eyes were cold and bloodthirsty. "Do what I tell you to do. If I find out that you have any thoughts of betrayal, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." Hearing this, Yun Shui Xian couldn't help but tremble. She lowered her head and knelt down. "Master, don't worry. Shui Xian will never be disloyal. In this life, Master will be the most respected." The Black Lotus Master stared at her as if he was trying to figure out if she was telling the truth. After a long while, he said, "It's good that you think this way. Come here." Yun Shueshin's eyelashes fluttered. She walked up to him stiffly and lowered her head, not daring to look at him. "Raise your head," the Black Lotus Master instructed. Hearing this, Yun Shueshin raised her head. Immediately after, she saw him point a finger at the space between her eyebrows. In an instant, a stream of qi flowed from his finger into the space between her eyebrows. The black qi surged and gradually turned into a black lotus with only 3 petals. Chapter 3489. Yun Shueshin felt something in her mind. Then, she felt a burning sensation between her eyebrows. Before she could react, her master had already retracted his hand. Keep an eye on Fengjiu's movements. Don't act rashly without my orders. But master, cultivators from the upper realm have to pass through the immortal path that Fengjiu has ordered people to guard in order to go to the lower realm. I'm afraid we won't be able to pass through, a cultivator said. Hearing this, the Black Lotus Lord glanced at the cultivator and said gloomily, I've already imparted the technique to Wang Xuexin. She has her own ways to bring you over. Hearing this, the cultivators were slightly surprised. They couldn't help but look at Wang Xuexin, who was standing there in a daze. Their eyes flashed. Her vital yin was gone. It was still there earlier. How, suddenly, the cultivators' hearts skipped a beat. They recalled that she had been called in by their master and had only just come out. Furthermore, she was not wearing her usual white dress when she came out of the cave abode. Instead, she was wearing a loose black robe and a large hat. Her entire aura had changed. Their master had imparted the technique to her. It seemed like she had become their master's woman. After the Black Lotus Lord explained some things to the crowd, he left with the two black-robed cultivators beside him. He left Yuan Xuexin behind to take care of these people's movements. Seeing that the Black Lotus Lord and the Sovereign of Sky Reaching had left, Wan Yanshirsan couldn't help but sigh softly. He was really worried that he would be discovered if he mingled with these people. Fortunately, the two people he was afraid of had already left. He had to find a chance to leave and report to Fengjiu and the others. It was a pity that he didn't know what they were planning. Yun Xuexin, who was in front of him, said a few words before turning to enter the cave abode. When Wan Yanshirsan saw this, he secretly retreated when no one was paying attention. However, after turning around and walking a few meters, he suddenly heard a voice calling out to him from behind. Where are you going? A cultivator called out when he saw someone walking behind a tree. Wan Yanshirsan clutched his stomach with one hand and lowered his head. I'm going to relieve myself. I'll be back soon. Seeing this, the man glanced at him and didn't say anything more. He turned around and started talking with the others. He didn't notice anything wrong. That was also true. He had lowered his presence, and the appearance of the mask was too ordinary and inconspicuous. No one would pay attention to him. While they weren't paying attention, he walked into the woods. When he was far away, he took off his black robe and mask and put them into the space. Then, he used the transmission scroll to quickly leave this place. Several days later, late at night, in the backyard of the Phoenix residence of the Phoenix dynasty, Fengjiu, who was sound asleep, suddenly turned pale. Her forehead was covered with sweat, and her brows were tightly knitted together. Her body seemed to be pressed down by someone, and she tried to open her eyes, but she couldn't. A powerful spiritual energy surged forth from her body. As if she had lost control, it rushed out of the room and filled the entire foam manor. In the instant that powerful spiritual energy and pressure were released, practically the entire foam manor was alarmed. Everyone who had been sleeping soundly quickly leapt up and rushed out of their rooms. What happened? Chapter 3490. In the guest room, Mo Chen put on his clothes and walked out. Sensing the aura in the air, he immediately formed a seal with his hands to cover the foam manor. This was to prevent the aura from escaping and causing a commotion. He walked out and headed straight for Fengjiu's courtyard. Before he could speak, he heard Feng Xiao ask, Mo Chen, what is going on? Something should have happened with Fengjiu. This aura is her aura. As Mo Chen spoke, he walked towards Fengjiu's courtyard. The closer he got, the stronger the pressure became. Feng Xiao, Feng Sanyuan, and the others wanted to get closer, but they found that the pressure was too strong. They could not even enter the courtyard. You guys wait outside. Her aura and pressure are being released. You will be injured if you come in. Mo Chen stopped and said to the people behind him. Only then did he walk inside. Everyone saw that a layer of light covered his body, blocking the pressure and air around him. He pushed open the door and walked in. Leng Shuang, what is going on? Is Xiao Jiu inside? What happened to her? Weren't you standing guard in the courtyard? The anxious Feng Sanyuan looked at Leng Shuang and asked. Leng Shuang's face was a bit pale, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. She took a deep breath and said to Feng Sanyuan, I was originally in the courtyard, but suddenly, a powerful pressure and air came out of Master's room. I wanted to go in and take a look, but I was kicked out of the courtyard. I don't know what exactly happened, but during this time, no one else came. Hearing this, everyone's brows furrowed tightly. If no one else came, then why did it suddenly become like this? What exactly was going on? They were anxious and wanted to go in to take a look, but because the difference in strength was too great, they could not get close. They could only wait outside. Mo Chen entered the room and could not help but feel shocked by the aura and pressure that filled the room. He entered the room, and when he saw Fengjiu on the bed, his brows furrowed, and he quickly walked over. 9. Aju, wake up. He called out to her, gently shaking her body. However, she did not wake up. Her face was pale and in pain, as if she was experiencing something that hurt her to the bone. 9. Wake up. He continued to call out, but it was to no avail. Originally, he thought that something had happened to her while she was cultivating. However, looking at the situation now, it seemed like she was having a nightmare. Just what kind of dream had trapped her? Why was she in so much pain? Looking at her tightly clenched fists and her struggling and painful expression, he was worried that she would go berserk and explode if she continued like this. He immediately helped her up and sat cross-legged behind her. Then, he gathered the aura in his body in his palms. A golden light surged from his palm. This golden spiritual energy was transmitted from his palm into her body, trying to suppress the violent aura on her body. 9. Wake up. 9. Fengjiu only felt an anxious voice calling out to her in her ear. That voice covered the voice in her head. She also felt a cool aura circulating in her body. Gradually, the violent aura on her body was restrained. The voice in her ear became clearer, and she suddenly calmed down. 9. It's me, Mo Chen. 9. Wake up. Hearing that voice, she suddenly opened her eyes. The aura in her body changed, and she instinctively rebounded. Chapter 3491. Mo Chen's body bounced back and hit the bed behind him. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Fengjiu was startled and turned around to look, Mo Chen. Outside, because they felt the surrounding air flow and pressure disappear, they quickly walked inside. When they arrived, they saw Mo Chen lying on the bed with a pale face and blood at the corner of his mouth. Xiao Jiu, what happened? Feng girl, are you okay? What happened to Mo Chen? Everyone gathered around and asked. When they saw that she was sitting on the bed, they secretly sighed in relief. Shangguan Wanrong saw that she was only wearing undergarments and said to everyone, you all go out first. Leng Shuang and Qin Xian stay. Seeing this, Feng Sanyuan thought for a moment, then let everyone wait outside. After everyone left, Shangguan Wanrong said to Leng Shuang and Qin Xian, Leng Shuang, help Mo Chen. Qin Xian, help Xiao Jiu put on clothes. Yes. The two responded and went forward to help. Fengjiu looked at Mo Chen and asked, how are you? I'm fine. As Mo Chen spoke, he raised his hand to wipe the blood at the corner of his mouth and got off the bed. However, as soon as he got off the bed, his body swayed. Fortunately, Leng Shuang and Fengjiu reached out to support him. Help him sit down in a chair. Fengjiu gestured and stood up to put on his coat. Then he sat down beside the chair and reached out to take Mo Chen's pulse. Shangguan Wanrong asked Qin Xian to clean up the blood-stained bed and opened the door to disperse the smell of blood in the air. "I'm sorry, I hurt you," she said apologetically. After retracting her hand, she took out a pill from her space and gave it to him. "You need to recuperate for 2 days. Don't use your spiritual power anymore." Mo Chen took the pill and swallowed it. He took a few sips of water from Ling Shuang and calmed down before asking, "What happened to you just now? Why is his spiritual energy running amok? I thought you had gone berserk while cultivating." When he saw her like that, he was really shocked. He was really worried that he wouldn't be able to suppress the violent aura in her body. If he couldn't suppress it, she wouldn't be able to wake up. He was afraid that the final result would be her body exploding and she would die. "That's right, Xiao Jiu. Why did this happen out of nowhere? Are you okay now?" Shangguan Wanrong also asked worriedly. "Mother, I'm fine. Don't worry, I just..." She paused and her eyes flashed, "I just had a nightmare." "How could a normal dream make you like that?" Shangguan Wanrong looked at Mo Chen and asked, "Mo Chen, is she okay like this?" Mo Chen smiled gently and said, "She's fine now that she's awake." "That's good. You guys sit down first. I'll go outside and tell them so they won't worry." Shangguan Wanrong said and then walked outside. In the room, Qin Xian was cleaning the floor and the blood-stained bed. Only Ling Shuang was waiting by Fengjiu's side. Mo Chen looked at Fengjiu, whose face was still pale, and asked, "What did you dream of?" He had almost trapped himself to death in the dream. "Do you know that if you didn't wake up in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable?" Fengjiu picked up the teacup and drank a mouthful of water. She calmed her heart, which hadn't completely calmed down. She paused for a moment, then narrowed her eyes and stared at the cup in her hand. She faintly said, "I had a very scary dream. In the dream, there was blood everywhere. I couldn't move and watched the people around me die one by one. I wanted to save them, but I was powerless." Chapter 3492. She had this dream right before they were about to get married. Her heart was faintly uneasy. Everything in the dream was uncontrollable, yet it was so real. Mo Chen's eyes flickered slightly when she heard this. It was unknown what she was thinking as she listened to Mo Chen's words. After a while, she said, "Don't think too much about it. With your current strength, who can easily injure you? Moreover, whether it's your grandfather, your father, or your followers, their strength is no longer the same as before. Even if something really happens, they will be able to handle it." He paused, then continued, "It's because you're too worried that you had this dream. It's fine, don't worry. We're here for you." Feng Sanyuan and Feng Xiao were standing at the entrance. They also heard the conversation inside. They looked at each other, then walked in. Feng Sanyuan looked at her pale face and said, "Feng lass, Mo Chen is right. You're too worried. You're about to be a bride, so why are you still thinking about these things all day long? You, don't think too much. It's just a dream. There's no need to take it seriously." That's right, that's right." Feng Xiao also nodded. He looked at Mo Chen and asked, "Mo Chen, how are you? Are you alright?" "I'm fine. It's just a backlash. I'll be fine after some rest." Mo Chen spoke, then said to Fengjiu, "I just set up a barrier around the Feng Manor to prevent your aura from alarming the people outside. You can withdraw it later." "Alright." Fengjiu replied, then said, "I'll have someone send you back to rest." "Master, I'll send young Master Mo Chen back." Lang Hua walked forward. Mo Chen smiled and waved his hand, "I'm not that weak. There's no need to send me back. I can go back on my own." As he spoke, he stood up and said, "I took some pills to recover. I'm much better now. It's not that serious." He nodded slightly at the crowd before walking out. Leng Hua, follow him. Fengjiu gestured. Yes. Leng Hua responded and followed behind. Fengjiu stood up and walked outside. He looked at the barrier in the sky that enveloped the foam manor. With a wave of his sleeve, a wave of spiritual energy was released, and the barrier in the air was destroyed. Grandfather, father, mother, all of you should go back and rest. I'm fine. She looked at them and said. All right. Then you should rest early. They nodded and walked out. Shangguan Wanrong was half a step behind. She said to Fengjiu, I asked Qin Xian to boil a bowl of soup to calm the nerves. You should drink a bowl before you sleep. As she spoke, she gently patted her daughter's hand. Nyang Qin will come to see you tomorrow. All right. Fengjiu responded. After watching her leave, he looked at Song Ming and the others. You guys go back to sleep too. Fengjiu, are you really fine? Ning Lang asked worriedly. I'm fine. I just had a bad dream. She smiled. You scared me to death. I thought something had happened. Ning Lang sighed and patted his chest, saying, then you should rest early. If you can't sleep, then sit for a while and eat something before you sleep. Do you think she's you? Luo Fei said unhappily. After glancing at Ning Lang, he said to Fengjiu, if you can't sleep, we can chat with you. We can still play chess. Song Ming and Duan Yi also said. Chapter 3493. Seeing this, they didn't say anything else. They turned around and went back to their rooms to rest. Not long after they left, Fengjiu saw Leng Hua come back and said, go to the room and bring out the soft couch for me. Okay. Leng Hua responded and walked into the room. You go back and rest too. You don't have to wait here. She said to Leng Shuang. Hearing this, Leng Shuang responded and left. Bai Qingqing came and saw her sitting at the table. She asked, Master, are you okay? The previous movement was so loud that everyone in the mansion was alarmed. She was worried that Hao would be hurt by the airflow because he was young, so she formed a boundary to block some of it for him. At this time, he was sleeping and didn't know that something had happened to her master. I'm fine. How is Hao? Fengjiu asked. He's sleeping soundly and hasn't woken up. Well, that's good. Keep an eye on him and go back. I don't need anyone to wait on me. She said and motioned for her to leave. Yes. Bai Qingqing responded and left. Leng Hua brought out the soft couch and a blanket and put them in the courtyard. He looked at Fengjiu and asked, Master, do you want to watch the stars here? Why don't you let Qin Xian play the zither for you later? At this time, Qin Xian came in with a bowl of calming soup and said, Master, have a bowl of soup. She put the bowl of soup in front of Fengjiu. Fengjiu supported her chin with one hand and looked at the sky without saying anything. No one knew what she was thinking. Leng Hua motioned to Qin Xian. Qin Xian went to the side and sat down. She took out the zither and gently plucked the strings. The pleasant tinkling sound spread in the courtyard and gradually calmed the worries and anxiety of the people in the mansion. Fengjiu listened to the zither for a long time. Her brows gradually relaxed. She drank the bowl of calming soup and lay down on the soft couch. She pulled the blanket over her body, but she did not close her eyes to sleep. Instead, she looked at the sky, as if thinking about something. On the other side, Xianyuan Mose couldn't help but frown when he heard Hui Lang's report. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the sky. He knew that she was still awake, so he sent a message to Fengjiu using his communication jade token. That night, the two of them were on opposite sides of the sky. Fengjiu was telling him about her uneasiness and worries through the communication jade token, while Xianyuan Mose was comforting her by telling her that he was here. As the days passed, the day of their wedding drew closer and closer. The people of the Feng Manor became busier and busier. That morning, people from all over the world rushed over to the Feng Manor with gifts to congratulate them. Aside from the emperors from all over the world sending gifts, the mayors from all over the world and people from sects and schools also sent gifts to congratulate Feng Jiu and Xianyuan Mo's marriage. At the entrance, the housekeeper took the invitation and looked at it. He then continued to announce, "The principal of the School of Stars and Clouds has come to congratulate. He has sent 10 rare antiques, a pair of night pearls from the Eastern Sea, a 1,000-year-old purple ginseng." The housekeeper followed the names of the people who had come to congratulate the Feng Manor, as well as the list of gifts that had been sent. Every voice contained spiritual energy and clearly spread to the surroundings. Chapter 3494. How amazing! From dawn until now, the Feng Manor's gates have not been empty. A commoner sighed in amazement as he looked at the bustling Feng Manor. Because tomorrow was the day of the Feng Manor's eldest young Miss wedding, almost everyone had chosen today to send gifts to the Feng Manor. No matter if it was the family heads dressed in bright and luxurious clothes, or the sect heads dressed in simple and loose robes, or the calm and dignified school heads, each one was a person that the commoners had never seen before. Today, however, they had all gathered in the Feng Manor to send gifts to the Feng Manor's eldest young miss. Of course, this is the Feng Manor's eldest young miss. It's because of her and the Feng family's people that no one dares to invade this place. Now that she is about to get married, there will naturally be people coming from everywhere to congratulate her. That's right, this marriage is the focus of everyone's attention. Naturally, it will cause a stir everywhere. In the crowd, an old man stroked his beard and said, "The people here today should be people from the lower and upper continents. You don't know this, but the Feng family's eldest young miss is someone who has gone to the upper world. Since she is getting married, the people from the upper world will naturally send gifts. Just watch. The people coming tomorrow are all important people." Hearing this, everyone could not help but sigh. Inside the Feng Manor, the Feng family members were all busy receiving the guests, especially Lang Hua and Du Fan. Because they were Fengjiu's people, even if the guests did not see Fengjiu, they still had to see them and greet them before leaving. Because they needed to receive the guests, the inns and restaurants near the Feng Manor had already been booked by Lang Hua and the others. They were used to receive the guests. What made the Feng family happy was that even Feng Yi and Zhao Yang had followed their master's orders to come down the mountain and congratulate them. Inside the Feng Manor, the people in the front were busy going in and out. In the back courtyard, Fengjiu was leisurely accompanying Mo Chen, Hao, Feng Yi, Zhao Yang and the others. Your master really knows how to conduct himself. He knew to let you use the opportunity of sending gifts to come back. Fengjiu ate some pastries while glancing at Feng Yi. 5 years had passed. The little brat from back then had already become a young man. Looking at him and Zhao Yang, Fengjiu's gaze softened. Of these two people, one had been personally delivered, and the other had been brought back by her. Now, they were already this big. I say, Master said that once you get married, we will return to cultivating. Feng Yi said, his childlike appearance. His actions were now much more mature after cultivating in the mountains for so many years, he was used to being independent. He was not reluctant to part with his family. Since you've come back, you should spend more time with Grandpa and the others. They haven't seen you for a few years. As for Yang, Feng Jiu looked at the sturdy young man and smiled. You should spend more time with Hao, Practice with him. Okay. Zhao Yang agreed. Thinking a bit, he took out a small box from his space and handed it over with both hands. He shyly said, Sister Feng, I personally made this. It's a wedding gift for you. Feng Jiu was slightly surprised. She reached out to take it and opened it. Oh. This is a bracelet made from crystals of different elements. You actually have such good craftsmanship. It's so beautiful. Chapter 3495. Seeing that she liked it, Zhao Yang couldn't help but smile happily. These crystal cores were all carved from the crystal cores of the fierce beasts I hunted. I asked Master to carve a talisman on them that can keep you safe. Also, Sister Feng's name is on it. Thank you, I like it very much. Feng Jiu said with a smile. Looking at Zhao Yang, who smiled happily because of her words, she couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. Feng Yi saw this and also took out something. I also have something to give you. Feng Jiu couldn't help but smile. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him jokingly. You are my little uncle, so you have to prepare a generous gift. Hearing this, Hao who was sitting to the side, pulled on Feng Jiu's sleeve and asked, Mother, Hao didn't prepare a gift for Mother, what should I do? Hearing this, Feng Jiu reached out and pinched his little face. You are the best gift. Mo Chen drank tea and listened to them talk. Seeing Feng Jiu's face brimming with happiness, he couldn't help but smile. Being able to see her happy, and married to the person she liked, he was satisfied. Guan Shilin helped greet the guests in the front, while Luo Fei, Song Ming, and the others helped lead the guests to the inn and restaurant. Lang Hua and Du Fan took over the reception. They busied themselves for an entire day, and it could be said that the number of people who came to present gifts was uncountable. The boxes of congratulatory gifts filled up the manor's storeroom, and in the end, there was no more space. Thus, Feng Sanyuan had them store all the congratulatory gifts in a spatial ring. In the evening, they came to Feng Jiu's courtyard. Seeing the people in the courtyard who had already started to get busy, Feng Sanyuan and Feng Xiao couldn't help but smile. Feng girl. Xiao Jiu. The two called out as they walked in. Behind them, Su Shi and Shangguan Wanrong came in together. Grandpa, grandmother, father, mother. She got up and walked in front of them. She smiled and asked, Why are you all here? Most of the guests have been taken care of. Luo Yu and the others took the rest to the inns and restaurants. With your brother and Leng Hua taking care of them, we took the time to come and see you. Feng Sanyuan said, Your wedding time is tomorrow morning. If you have time tonight, find some time to sleep for a while. She has to put on her makeup tonight. I don't think she has much time to rest. Shangguan Wanrong walked up with a smile and said, If you're tired, close your eyes and take a nap. Tonight, you have to put on your makeup and prepare for other things. When you get married tomorrow morning, even if you use spatial teleportation to get there, you still have to pay a visit to Moza's father. There are still many things to do. In particular, you can't make any mistakes. You have to be 120% alert. That's right. If you're tired, take a nap. Su Shi also said with a smile. She looked at the busy people going in and out of the courtyard and said, In the blink of an eye, Xiao Jiu is going to get married. The days passed so quickly. They chatted in the courtyard for a while. Feng Sanyuan and Feng Xiao left first, leaving Su Shi, Shangguan Wanrong, and the others to accompany her in the courtyard. Yi Jing came out of the room and said with a smile, Come in and see how the room is decorated. If there's anything you need to add, I'll have someone bring it in. Chapter 3496. So, they walked into the room together. Feng Yi, Zhao Yang, Hao, and Guan Shilin's son also followed behind. Su Shi and Shangguan Wanrong just chatted with Feng Jiu for a while. After looking at the layout of the room, they let Feng Jiu eat something and sleep for a while. In the second half of the night, they had to start bathing and putting on makeup. Everyone in the courtyard was cleared out. Only Bai Qingcheng and Qin Xian stayed in the courtyard. Even the children were called back to the courtyard to sleep early. Feng Jiu lay in bed but couldn't fall asleep. Because she was a bride to be married, she couldn't hide her happiness and anticipation. It would be strange if she could fall asleep at this time. Lying in bed, she couldn't sleep, so she closed her eyes to rest. At midnight, there was a light knock on the door. Qin Xian and Bai Qingqing's voices came. "Master, it's time to bathe and change clothes." "N." Fengjiu responded and got up lazily. She bathed and changed clothes while they served her. Then she sat in front of the dressing table and began to put on makeup. Just like Fengjiu, on the other side, Xianyuan Mose, who was preparing for the wedding, was also excited and couldn't hide his joy. He repeatedly asked his subordinates to confirm that there were no mistakes in all aspects. He asked the people in the palace to prepare, and also asked Ren Xiang to stay in his mansion to prepare all kinds of things. The placement of the new room in the mansion, the layout of the mansion, and the inspection inside and outside. It could be said that they were very busy here. Whether it was for the people of Yan Jian or for the people of Xianyuan dynasty, seeing that Xianyuan Mose was finally going to get married made them more excited than getting married themselves. "Ying Yi, calculate the time. Don't miss the auspicious time of the wedding." Xianyuan Mose said to Ying Yi again. "Yes, master, don't worry. This subordinate remembers." Ying Yi responded. Looking at his master who was wearing a new robe, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curve slightly, revealing an imperceptible smile. Master seemed to be nervous and looking forward to it. She had already changed into her new clothes and was waiting for the time to come. While he was busy and nervous, time passed quietly. When the first ray of sunlight shone on the earth, Xianyuan Mose revealed a smile. His robes fluttered as he walked out in large strides while instructing, "Light the firecrackers. Play music. Come with me to escort the bride." A deep voice containing a powerful aura rang out with joy. Almost at the same time, the sound of firecrackers rang out from both the gates of the palace and the gates of his residence. Dressed in martial attire, the majestic Yan guard split into groups of 2 to pick up the betrothal gifts. There were large mahogany chests with red bouquets tied to the chests. The chests of betrothal gifts were picked out by the neat, military-like troops, and followed behind Xianyuan Mose in a grandiose manner. Roar! With a dragon's roar, the azure dragon came out of Xianyuan Mose's space. After circling twice in the air, it came in front of Xianyuan Mose. In the midst of the firecrackers and music, Xianyuan Mose, who was dressed in a luxurious black robe with golden embroidery, stood up on the azure dragon and flew into the air. Behind him, thousands of people followed neatly. Some were playing music, some were carrying gifts, some were carrying the bridal sedan, and there were nearly 100 women in dresses holding flower baskets in their hands. Chapter 3497. Xianyuan Mose passed through the teleportation array. He didn't come directly to the city where Fengjiu was, but came from the sky in the distance, leading a wedding procession of over 1,000 people. Along the way, joyous music played and flowers fluttered. In the sky, the blue sky and white clouds were suffused with a layer of colorful clouds. The entire scene was as beautiful as a fairyland, and it was unforgettable. At this moment, several streaks of light flashed across the sky and landed on the mountain peaks around Yunhua City like shooting stars. They looked at the thousands of people who came from afar. An old man stood at the peak of a mountain and his voice was filled with spiritual energy. This old man is the sect leader of the Blue Star Immortal sect. I'm here to congratulate the Yama Lord on the marriage of the Ghost Doctor. I'll gift 99 chests of treasures to the Ghost Doctor's dowry. His voice was like thunder that reverberated between heaven and earth. That voice clearly entered the ears of everyone in all directions, causing a burst of exclamations. The sect leader of the Qing City Immortal sect is here to congratulate the Xianyuan monarch and the Ghost Doctor on their marriage. I'll gift 99 chests of treasures to the Ghost Doctor's dowry. The 4 great sects are here to congratulate the Yama Lord on the marriage of the Ghost Doctor. I'll gift 99 chests of rare antiques and herbs to the Ghost Doctor's dowry. Hearing the congratulatory voices and the gifts, the people below were all in an uproar. That's a strong cultivator from the upper realm. Hiss. I didn't expect those people from the upper realm to come as well. Some of the family heads could not help but suck in a breath of cold air when they heard the person who introduced himself. However, at this moment, another ray of light flashed past and a figure appeared at a certain high place. An old voice that contained a hint of laughter could be heard. This old man is Han Yuanzi. I'm here to drink some wine and to add to Fengjiu's dowry. Ha 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 ha, Fengjiu, I wish you and Xianyuan Mose to have a child soon and grow old together. The 8 great clans of 100 River City congratulate the Yama Lord on the marriage of the ghost doctor. Under the orders of the master of the black market, we are here to congratulate the ghost doctor on her wedding, and to add to her dowry. The voices outside continued to echo through the sky. In the room in the Feng Manor's inner courtyard, Fengjiu listened to the voices, and a beautiful smile appeared on his face. Those familiar faces are all here. Coming, coming. The bridegroom is here. Feng Yi ran excitedly from outside, followed by the short-legged Hao, and Zhao Yang. Little Feng Feng, let me tell you, there are 7 colored clouds in the sky outside. There are over 1,000 people coming to escort the bride. That long line is circling the sky, coming from afar. Joy is spreading all over the sky, and flowers are sprinkling all the way. That. I-oh. Feng Yi was so excited that he danced as if he was the one getting married. He was so excited that he stumbled and fell forward. Be careful, don't fall. Yi Jing reached out to support him and shook her head helplessly. These children. Feng Yi smiled embarrassedly. He stood up and straightened his clothes. After thanking Yi Jing, he quickly walked over to Fengjiu's side and excitedly said, there are so many people outside. Not only are there people surrounding our manor, but there are also people in the air far away. Fengjiu glanced at him through the mirror and joked, calm down. People who don't know might think you're the one getting married. Chapter 3498. Feng Yi blinked as he looked at her and asked curiously, do I need to carry you? Fengjiu saw the unconcealable happiness and curiosity on his face and couldn't help but lightly tap his nose. She asked with a smile, what? Do you want to carry me? Hearing this, Feng Yi awkwardly rubbed his nose and said, I might not be able to carry you. His body wasn't even as big as Yang Yang. Even if he could carry her, he wouldn't be able to carry her. Yi Jing pursed her lips and smiled, no need to carry her. The red carpet in the residence is laid out all the way to the outside. She'll walk out. You guys can just follow behind her and help hold her dress. Okay. Feng Yi immediately agreed. Hao looked at Feng Yi and then looked at Yi Jing. He couldn't help but lower his head and play with his fingers. He came to Fengjiu's side and asked in a small voice, Mother, then what about me? Fengjiu looked at him and said with a smile, help Nyangqin hold the hem of her dress. It has to be someone as small as you. Feng Yi is too big and he's also my little uncle. No. Why not? Then what should I do? Feng Yi couldn't help but widen his eyes when he heard this. You just obediently follow behind her. Fengjiu glanced at him and said. Shangguan Wanrong and Su Shi walked in and saw that the room was packed with people. They came to Fengjiu's side, why haven't you put on the phoenix coronet yet? Quick, bring the phoenix coronet over. It's almost time. The bride escorts are already outside. As a result, the children were all chased out. Yi Jing and the others in the room quickly helped her put on the phoenix coronet and checked it up and down to see if they missed anything. There's no need for this veil, Fengjiu said with a smile. She looked at them and said, this phoenix coronet has a bead curtain hanging down. This is enough. No need for a veil. I've never heard of this before. The bride has to wear a red veil when she gets married. Shangguan Wanrong said and couldn't help but look at Su Shi. Seeing this, Su Shi smiled and said, let her be. She's not an ordinary person to begin with, so there's no need to hold a wedding like an ordinary person's. What's more, what she said wasn't wrong. It's the same even if there's a curtain of beads hanging down from the phoenix coronet. It's half hidden and half hidden. It's extremely beautiful. Hearing her say this, Shangguan Wanrong nodded and stood up from the fengjiu. She smiled and said, after seeing them come, the fire phoenix also flew around outside. Mosa's azure dragon also came. One dragon and one phoenix are outside, and everyone is praising them. Little Feng, are you ready? Feng Sanyuan's voice came from outside. Xiao Jiu, are you done? Feng Xiao asked. All right, I'm coming. Shangguan Wanrong agreed and said to Fengjiu, let your grandfather and father send you off to get married. Let them lead you to the bridal sedan chair. Yes. Fengjiu agreed and straightened her clothes. With the support of two people, she walked out of the room step by step and into the courtyard. In the courtyard, Mo Chen, Feng Sanyuan, Feng Xiao, Song Ming, and Leng Hua were all waiting. Pairs of eyes watched as she slowly walked out of the room. Their eyes all lit up. Even if they knew she was very beautiful and were used to seeing her beauty, today, at this moment, when they saw her wearing a new wedding dress and wearing a phoenix coronet and beads as she slowly walked out, it still stunned them. Chapter 3499. Mo Chen looked at her. He watched as she gracefully walked out step by step. He watched as her dress bloomed with flowers. She was dignified and noble. He watched as her wedding dress was dazzling and luxurious. That peerless elegance was dazzling and eye-catching. Her every movement exuded a noble aura. The bead curtain covering her face allowed her beautiful face to be faintly discernible. He could faintly see the happiness in her eyes and the gentle smile on her lips. He thought that she was happy. Because the person she was going to marry was the one she loved the most in her life. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on his lips. His gaze was fixed on her, following her movements. His gaze was filled with reluctance, complexity, and blessings. Feng Sanyuan and Feng Xiao walked forward and arrived at Fengjiu's side. They took Fengjiu's hands from Su Shi and Shangguan Wanrong's hands. They held her hands on either side and said, we'll send you off. They supported her and walked out step by step. The red carpet on the ground extended to the outside of the manor. They walked in front, and the people behind them slowly followed. Hao Er and Guan Shilin's son obediently held on to Fengjiu's dress and slowly walked. Xianyuan Mose stood in front of the Feng Manor's gates and waited. In the sky, the azure dragon and the fire phoenix circled around. Around the Feng Manor, there were experts from all over, including the rulers and cultivators from all over. At this time, everyone's gazes were on the Feng Manor's gates. The Wanyan family wishes the Xianyuan ruler and the ghost doctor a joyous wedding. We present 99 chests of treasures to add to the ghost doctor's dowry. A voice sounded. It was the travel-worn Wanyan Shirsan. He came from the horizon, and behind him was a group of people carrying chests of gifts. Wanyan Qianhua, who was standing in front of the Feng Manor's gates, saw that he had finally arrived and could not help but reveal a smile. A few days ago, he sent a message back, saying that he was called back by the elders of his family on his way back. They asked him to find someone to send wedding gifts to Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu. He said that he would definitely come back today, but he didn't expect to wait until now. Fortunately, he made it in time. Just as she was thinking, she was pulled back by the person beside her. She frowned and looked at Jun Ju Shang, who was hugging her. She said, "Let go." Jun Ju Shang glanced at her and let her go. He said, "There are many people today. Be careful. Don't get squeezed." He stood by her side and didn't leave. He only used his body to separate her from the people around her, secretly protecting her so that she wouldn't be bumped into in the chaos. "I'll take care of myself." I don't need your kindness, Wanyan Qianhua said, not appreciating the kindness. In the crowd, Yun Shuexin raised her head and looked forward. Her resentful gaze fell on Xianyuan Mo's body. The anger in her heart caused her to tightly clench her fists. Her nails dug into her palms, causing her to feel a bit of pain. She could only watch like this. She could only watch like this. She could only watch like this. She watched him carefully arrange this grand wedding. She watched him marry that woman. She felt unreconciled, but there was nothing she could do. She had already lost her chastity. Even if she hadn't lost her chastity, he had never looked at her. Her heart was filled with hatred. She hated that she could not ruin this wedding. However, she knew that as long as she dared to make the slightest move, she could forget about leaving this place alive. It was at this time that the sound of cheers and gasps came from the front. She followed everyone's gaze and looked towards the Feng Manor's gates. Quickly look, the bride has come out. The bride is so beautiful. Chapter 3500. Xianyuan Mo knew that she would be very beautiful in this wedding dress, but he did not expect her to be so beautiful that it was suffocating. His deep eyes were filled with deep affection as he looked at the bride who was slowly walking towards him with the support of her grandfather and father. His heart could not help but surge with anticipation, joy, and excitement. He walked up to her, step by step, and stared deeply at her. When he saw the rare bashful expression on her face, he couldn't help but smile. Aju, I'm here to marry you. From this moment onwards, you are my, Xianyuan Mo's, wife, and the love of my life. I'm willing to use my life to protect you, and use the rest of my life to bring you happiness. In this life, I'll never leave you. His voice was deep and magnetic. As he spoke each word, it entered the ears of the people around him. Everyone could not help but be shocked. They were somewhat surprised that a dignified monarch would say such words in front of so many people. Mo Chen, who had followed behind him, stood to the side, quietly watching and listening. When he saw Xianyuan Mo take out a small box from his space and open it, and saw 2 rings inside, his eyes could not help but move slightly. He could not help but look at Fengjiu. Ah Jiu, I specially had this custom made. It is unique and represents the unique you and me. Xianyuan Mo held the smaller ring and looked at her, saying, let me help you put it on. Fengjiu looked at the ring and felt her eyes heat up. She looked at him through the bead curtain and nodded lightly, okay. Xianyuan Mo took the ring and put it on Fengjiu's left ring finger. At the same time, Fengjiu also took the larger ring. She looked at Xianyuan Mo and said, in this life, Fengjiu, will only recognize you as my husband. In this life, I will never betray you. As soon as her solemn voice fell, she took the ring and put it on Xianyuan Mo's hand. Looking at the 2 rings shining dazzlingly under the sun, she couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. Xianyuan Mo held her hand and looked at Feng Sanyuan, Feng Shao, and the others. After bidding farewell to them with Fengjiu, Feng Shao personally held Fengjiu's hand and handed it to Xianyuan Mo. Mo, I'll leave my daughter to you. You must treat her well. Don't let her suffer. You must make her happy. Even though he knew that Xianyuan Mo would treat his daughter very well, Feng Shao still couldn't help but remind him. Xianyuan Mo held Fengjiu's hand and said solemnly to Feng Shao, don't worry, father-in-law. I will treat Jiu well. Good, good, good. Feng Shao nodded and repeatedly agreed. Looking at his daughter who was about to get married, he couldn't help but tear up. It's getting late. You should set off, said Feng Sanyuan, telling them not to miss the time. Yes. After Xianyuan Mo and Fengjiu bid farewell to them again, he held Fengjiu's hand and walked towards the sedan. The body of the sedan was lowered, and the bride entered the sedan. The red curtains were lowered, and Xianyuan Mo took a leap. He stood on the back of the azure dragon and glanced at the crowd below. His deep voice contained a powerful pressure as it came from his mouth. Everyone, let's head to the Xianyuan dynasty for a toast. As soon as his voice fell, he raised his hand and gestured. Ing Yi and Grey Wolf shouted in unison, let's go. Chapter 35:01. After a busy day, Fengjiu sat by the bed of the bridal chamber. Through the bead curtain covering his face, he looked at the bridal chamber brimming with joy. The smile on his lips could not help but blossom. The sky outside was getting dark. Xianyuan Mose was drinking with the guests and had not yet returned. The bridal chamber was quiet and no one came to disturb them. Until there was a light knock on the door and Ling Shuang's voice came. Master, are you hungry? Do you want to eat something first? Ling Shuang pushed the door open and asked. Who knew that Ling Yi and Hao behind him also rushed in? Little Feng Feng. Mother. Don't push, run slowly. Qin Qin called out as she followed them in. Mother, mother. Hao came to the bedside and blinked his eyes at the new bed. He asked curiously, grandmother said that Hao should help mother to press the bed and give birth to a little brother next year. Mother, what is pressing the bed? When Fengjiu heard this, he was slightly startled. Then he chuckled and reached out to pick him up. It's playing on the new bed. Playing. But Hao only has himself. How can he play with himself? He was at a loss. After all, he was usually not a naughty child. Just go up and roll a few times. Feng Yi said and helped him take off his boots. Go, go. So Hao was pushed to the bed with a confused face. He was at a loss and really rolled a few times on it, making everyone in the room laugh. Yama Lord is coming. Someone outside shouted. Hao on the bed quickly got out of bed, put on his boots, and stood by Feng Ye's side. His serious little appearance made Fengjiu smile again. Okay, all of you go out. Qin Xin said with a smile and let everyone in the room leave. For the wedding of Master and Yama Lord, it was estimated that no one had the courage to make trouble in the bridal chamber. Master, I'll go to the kitchen and bring something over. Ling Shuang said and retreated. At this time, Xianyuan Mose, who was dressed in a luxurious black robe, walked in from the outside. He walked to Fengjiu's room and saw her sitting quietly by the new bed, waiting for him with a smile on her beautiful face. He couldn't help but ask softly, "Are you tired?" He walked forward and reached out to help her take off the phoenix coronet on her head. Why didn't you take off this phoenix coronet? It's so heavy. It's so tiring to wear it all the time. Without the bridal veil, I can only wait for you to come and take the crown. Fengjiu chuckled. He felt much more relaxed after taking off the phoenix coronet. Have you entertained the guests? There were Lang Hua and Du Fan attending to me. Moreover, Imperial Father was also present. There were also Song Ming, Luo Fei, and the others. Therefore, I only offered a toast before returning first. Xianyuan Mose said and sat down by the bed. He looked at her and asked, "Do you want to change your clothes first?" "It's fine, I'll change after bathing." She said. "Master, Yama Lord, please drink the wine of the cross cups." Bai Qingqing came forward with a tray. There were 2 wine glasses on the tray. Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu looked at each other and raised their wine glasses. They leaned forward and drank the wine of the cross cups with their arms around each other. At this time, Bai Qingqing looked at the 2 of them drinking wine and softly said, "A pair of mandarin ducks crossing necks is a lifetime of love. Husband and wife will accompany each other until their hair turns white." As she said this, the moment they put the wine glasses back on the tray, she bent her knees slightly and said with a smile, "I wish Master, Yama Lord, a happy marriage and a child soon." Chapter 35:02. Not long after, Ling Xuan came in with food and placed it on the table. He said, "Yama lord, master, eat something first. I'll get someone to prepare water for your bath." With that, he retreated. "Are you hungry? Eat something first." Xianyuan Mose took her hand and sat down at the table. "You've been busy with the wedding. Are you tired?" Fengjiu looked at him and asked. Xianyuan Mose smiled and said, "I'm not tired." "Aren't you going to eat?" Fengjiu asked. "I ate some in the palace." "You can eat," he said as he picked up some food for her. Thus, Fengjiu agreed and filled her stomach first. Leng Shuang had someone prepare water for their bath. After they ate, the food on the table was removed. After helping Fengjiu remove the makeup on her face, the door was closed and everyone in the courtyard left. "Let me help you bathe," Xianyuan Mose said as he walked with her to the bathtub and helped her change her clothes. Fengjiu wanted to refuse, but seeing that he was very interested, she let him do as he pleased. Xianyuan Mose took off his own clothes and stood naked in front of her. After he took off the layers of clothes on Fengjiu's body, he looked at Mancha's body. His gaze couldn't help but become more serene. When he thought about how tonight was their wedding night, his eyes flickered and he said in a hoarse voice, "Jiu, I've been waiting for this day for a long time." With that, he wrapped his arms around her waist and leaned over to kiss her lips. Fengjiu responded to his passionate kiss until her body went limp in his arms. He then carried her into the bathtub. In the bathtub, steam rose in spirals. The two of them were like a pair of mandarin ducks entwined with each other. After the bath, the limp Fengjiu leaned lazily in his arms. He carried her out of the bathtub and walked towards their new bed. In the past, they had been intimate, but Xianyuan Mose had always been guarding the final hurdle. Now, he could finally have her in a proper way. One could imagine the excitement in his heart. Everything was like water flowing through a canal, and everything was just going with the flow. In the new bed, Xianyuan Mose raised his hand and put down the veil beside the bed, covering the lively fragrance on the bed. Two figures could faintly be seen overlapping each other. Soft moans could be heard from the bed curtain, moving and seductive. The night was still long. This was their wedding night, and their passionate entanglement had only just begun. At the same time, in the palace, everyone was happily drinking the wedding wine. Mo Chen carried a jug of wine and went to the highest hall in the palace. He sat there and looked at the night sky. He lifted the jug of wine and poured it into his mouth. The fragrant wine flowed out from the corner of his mouth and soaked his clothes, but he didn't care at all. He just looked at the moon that peeked out from behind the clouds in the night sky in a daze, and no one knew what he was thinking. He tilted his head back and drank a few mouthfuls of wine. Then, he put the jug down and lay on it to look at the night sky. He stretched out his hand and placed it under the moon. From afar, it was as if the moon was in his hand. However, when he reached out to grab it, he could not grab anything. Chapter 3503. That night, everyone drank until they were drunk before going to the guest rooms to rest. The next day, they woke up naturally and left one after another. Fengjiu and the others did not wake up early on the day after the wedding because Xianyuan Mose's father told them not to wake up early to offer him tea and to rest well. Therefore, they were happy and at ease in the residence. Feng Yi and Zhao Yang came under their master's orders and could not stay here for long. Therefore, the next day, they bid farewell to Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose and rushed back to their sect. After they left, Han Yuanzi and the others also left one after another. The residence also became quieter because of the departure of their friends. Monarch Black Tortoise and his wife, who came to congratulate Fengjiu and the others, came to Fengjiu's courtyard on this day. They sat in the courtyard and drank tea and chatted with the two of them. It's like this. You are newlyweds and it's rare for you to have such a quiet and relaxing time. We want to bring Hao back to stay for a while. You see. Monarch Black Tortoise asked and looked at Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu looked at each other. Then, Fengjiu smiled and said, "We have no problem." Then, he looked at Hao and asked, "Hao can you go back and stay with your parents for a while?" Hao thought for a while and nodded, "Okay." Then, he said, "Then I'll go and stay for a while. I'll come back." Monarch Black Tortoise smiled happily, Okay. We'll send you back. Don't worry. You'll only stay for a while. You can come back whenever you want. Yes. Stay here occasionally, stay there too. We can also see you more. Monarch Black Tortoise's wife said softly and looked at Hao lovingly. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose said, "Let's do it this way. You take him back and don't send him here. We won't stay here for too long. When we go back to Sifang City, if he wants to come back, we'll send him back." Okay. Monarch Black Tortoise nodded and said to the two, "Thank you. Hao be good and listen to your father and mother." Fengjiu touched his head and said, "Hao knows. Mother, don't worry. Hao's good." As he spoke, he tilted his head slightly to look at her and asked, "Mother, when Hao comes back, will you have a little brother?" Fengjiu was startled. Being asked this by a child in front of the Black Tortoise Monarch couple, she couldn't help but blush. She smiled and said, "Not so fast." Monarch Black Tortoise laughed and said, "Then brother Xianyuan must work harder. It's fate to have a child. Don't worry. You're still young." Monarch Black Tortoise's wife said softly and said to Fengjiu, "Let nature take its course." Xianyuan Mose looked at Fengjiu and held her hand, "I'll work hard." Seeing him say this in front of them and the child, Fengjiu couldn't help but glare at him. Then, Monarch Black Tortoise said, "You guys talk first. I'll take Hao to pack some things." Chapter 3504. The Black Tortoise Monarch and his wife were surprised when they heard this. Their faces turned serious. "Are you saying that Sovereign Tong Tian wants to deal with you? How is that possible? How could he have the guts? With your current strength, he shouldn't dare to do anything to you. If it's just Sovereign Tong Tian, then there's nothing to be afraid of. What we're worried about is the Black Lotus Lord," Xianyuan Mose said in a deep voice. He looked deeply at Monarch Xuanwu and said, "I believe you know that a few days ago, someone became a godly king. That person is none other than Monarch Black Lotus." "Black Lotus Lord? Who's that?" "I've never heard of him before," said Sovereign Xuanwu with a frown. "This person possesses the ancient Black Lotus of Destruction. He was originally..." Xianyuan Mose told them about the Black Lotus Lord. "In the end," he said, "there has been no news of this person for a few years. However, we recently learned that he has advanced into the Godly King realm. He has become a Godly King powerhouse and is conspiring with Sovereign Tong Tian to deal with us." Sovereign Xuanwu asked, "If that's the case, then we have to be careful. Do you have any defenses? If we really fight him, what are our chances of winning?" "It's hard to say," said Xianyuan Mose, shaking his head. "Then what do we need to do?" asked Sovereign Xuanwu. "We don't know what they will do at the moment. If they really fight, it's not certain who will win in the end. We have enough people on our side. If even we can't deal with them, then even if we add you guys, it will only make things more and more out of control." Xianyuan Mose paused and said, "If that's the case, why don't you save your strength and protect the people you want to protect?" He was never a person who placed his hopes on others. He would rather rely on himself than on others. Therefore, he didn't think that Sovereign Xuanwu's participation would make the situation any better. With his and Fengjiu's strength, they were already strong enough to sweep through everything. As for the rest, it would depend on the battle. Many times, man proposes but God disposes. Hearing his words, Monarch Black Tortoise nodded. I understand. At noon, Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu personally sent them out of the residence. Fengjiu's heart ached when he saw Hao looking at him with tears in his eyes. Father, mother, I'm just going to stay for a while. I'll be back, he said to them. Fengjiu heard him and hugged him. He said, Hao, be good. Father and mother. We'll wait for you. You go back with your parents. Remember to cultivate. Yes, Hao knows, he replied. He hugged Fengjiu's neck tightly, unwilling to let go. All right, go ahead. Fengjiu patted his head and said. Hao retreated and let his biological parents hold his hand. In the end, he gathered his energy and flew towards the clouds. In the distance, they could still hear Hao shouting, Father, mother, Hao will come back. Xianyuan Mose looked at the reluctant Fengjiu and hugged her. It's best for him to go back with them. Chapter 3505. Don't think too much about other things. During this period of time, let's just enjoy the two of us. Xianyuan Mose said as he hugged her waist and said, I'll bring you around. The two of them walked inside. Fengjiu asked, have Song Ming and the rest left? They're still in the palace, Xianyuan Mose said as he lowered his head to look at her and asked, you want them to leave first? Yes. With their strength, if they really go against the Black Lotus Master, they won't be able to resist at all. Since that's the case, why don't we let them leave first so that they won't be implicated by us? Fengjiu said. After thinking for a while, he said, I'd like to let them cultivate in the upper world sections. That's easy. Write them a letter of recommendation and let them report to the upper world sections. Xianyuan Mose said as he walked inside with her. Where are you taking me for a spin? I've been to this residence before and I'm quite familiar with it. There's nothing better in the palace, Fengjiu said as he reached out to pluck a flower and played with it in his hand as they passed by the garden. Where do you want to go? I'll go with you, Xianyuan Mose said. Fengjiu thought for a while and said, we'll definitely attract attention when we go out. It'll probably be difficult for us to be at ease. Moreover, whether it's the upper world or the lower world, the people in these two continents will recognize us. Why don't we? Why don't we what? Xianyuan Mose raised his eyebrows and asked. Let's disguise ourselves and go to the continent where the sovereign of the sky-reaching sect is. Her eyes shone brightly as she said, he divided the land into a realm and became the sovereign of a region. Although he's in the upper world, he's also in the upper world's outer space. Now that he's joined forces with the Black Lotus Master, I want to go to the continent where they're at to take a look. Who knows, we might even find a chance to deal with them before they make a move. The two of us will go alone. Just the two of us, how about that? She looked at him and asked. Xianyuan Mose nodded. Sure. Since you want to go, I'll go with you. I'll leave after I've explained everything. He paused and asked, do we need to inform Mo Chen? Let's leave him a note. He has always prioritized protecting me. If I tell him, he probably won't feel at ease letting the two of us go alone. As she spoke, her gaze flickered. Moreover, I keep having the feeling that if he stays by my side, he will be burdened by me one day. She didn't want to owe him anything. After all, he never owed her anything, but he had to keep guarding her like this. To him, it was very unfair. If she could, she hoped that he could live his own life. However, she didn't know when it started, but it seemed that his life was intertwined with hers. Thinking of this, she could not help but sigh in her heart. In this world, the most difficult thing to repay was a debt of gratitude. I know, don't worry. Leave it to me. Xianyuan Mose said as he led her back to the courtyard. He let her rest in the courtyard for a while before he went to make arrangements. After he left, Fengjiu asked Ling Shuang to summon Ling Hua and the others. Not long after, the group arrived in the courtyard. Seeing her sitting in the middle of the courtyard, they bowed. Leng Hua asked, "Master, do you have any instructions for us to come here?" Fengjiu smiled and nodded. Not bad. I have some instructions for you. Chapter 3506. Hearing this, everyone was slightly surprised and couldn't help but look at each other. Du Fan asked, "Master, do you have other plans? Or do you want to stay here for a few more days? Mo Zhe and I are going to take a look at the continent where the sovereign of Tongtian is." Fengjiu looked at them and said, "I don't plan to tell Mo Chen about this. If he asks, don't tell him either." Seeing this, everyone paused for a moment, then nodded and replied, "Yes." "Master, when are you leaving?" Leng Hua asked. After Mo Zhe is done, we'll go to the palace to say goodbye to his father and leave." Fengjiu then said, "I'm going to let Song Ming and the others go to the sect in the upper world to cultivate. When the time comes, you can go with them." "Yes." Everyone replied. After listening to her instructions, they left first. Wanyan Shirsan came to the courtyard and said, "I heard you say you're leaving before I even came in. Looks like you really can't stay idle." Seeing that it was him, Fengjiu smiled, "This time, I have to thank you for bringing me such useful information. The facts have also proven that I was right to ask you to do this." "Ha ha ha, of course, I'm definitely a reliable person." Wanyan Shirsan laughed loudly and sat down at the table. "I originally wanted to come and say goodbye to you. It looks like you'll be leaving before us." "You're leaving? Going back to the upper world?" Fengjiu asked. This time I came out to give you a gift on behalf of my family. Now that I've finished my task, I have to go back and report. Also, I haven't been back for a long time, so I have to go back and take a look." Wanyan Shirsan looked at her and said, "I heard from Qian Hua that she's also going back to the upper world. I reckon that Jun Ju Shang will follow her." Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but smile. "My sister and Jun Ju Shang are like this now. I don't know when they'll be able to break this stalemate. However, I reckon that not long after the child is born, everything will be different. It's just that her reputation isn't very good if she has a child before getting married. I'll go back and persuade her. She'll be fine. After all, she has to give the child a complete family. Moreover, Jun Ju Shang is indeed a good man. He. Although his seniority is a bit high, and he's a bit old, but it's just right that he's an old man and a young wife." The two chatted in the courtyard for a while. Until they left. 2 days later. When Mo Chen came to the residence, he didn't see Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mo's. Just as he was about to ask Leng Hua, he saw him walking towards him. "Young Master Mo Chen." Leng Hua bowed to him and said, "We were just about to look for you." "Why are you looking for me?" Mo Chen asked. He glanced at him and asked, "Why aren't Audiobook and the others in the residence? I haven't seen her for a few days. Where did she go?" "Master and the Yama Lord left 2 days ago. This is the letter that Master left for young Master Mo Chen," Leng Hua said. He took out the letter left by Fengjiu from his sleeve and handed it to him. Hearing this, Mo Chen frowned. He took the letter and opened it. The more he read, the more he frowned. Did they say where they were going? Chapter 3507. Mo Chen looked at him and said seriously, "Do you know that the Black Lotus Lord's Black Lotus is very powerful? Even Fengjiu can't resist it." Leng Hua's eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. Fengjiu can't resist it. Even if she and Xianyuan Mo's work together, they don't have full confidence that they can defeat them. Especially when their enemy isn't just the Black Lotus Lord. If the Black Lotus Lord works together with the Sovereign of Sky Reaching and the Demon Lord, what do you think their chances of winning are? Mo Chen held the letter in his hand and looked deeply at Leng Hua. He said, "Why do you think I've been following her all this time? It's because they have a trial of life and death that has yet to be broken. No one knows when this trial of life and death will come true, or what the consequences will be. As for me, as the saint and the guardian of the star of the phoenix, I'm the only one who can help them once the trial of life and death comes." Mo Chen looked steadily at Leng Hua and asked, "Now, are you still going to tell me that you don't know where they went?" Hearing his words, Leng Hua sighed softly and said helplessly, "I know, but Mistress also told me not to tell you. Because Mistress doesn't want you to always be by her side and live for her. Mistress, she doesn't want to owe you." A dark light flashed across Mo Chen's eyes. He said, "She doesn't owe me anything. I'm just fulfilling my duty as the saint. Tell me, where did they go?" Leng Hua looked at him and finally said, "Master and the Yama Lord went to the mainland where the sovereign of sky reaching is. She said that she wanted to go there and take a look. As for the specific location, Master didn't say. We don't know either. Even if he disobeyed his master's orders, he still told him where his master had gone, because what he had said before was exactly what he was worried about. Forgive him for his selfishness. He knew that his master was in danger, but there was nothing they could do to help his master. Therefore, he hoped that Mo Chen could help his master. Even if he was punished by his master, he would have no regrets. He only hoped that his master and the Yama Lord would be safe and happy." Hearing this, Mo Chen gave him a deep look and nodded. "I understand." After speaking, she turned around and left. After Mo Chen left, Ling Shuang walked over from not far away. She looked at Mo Chen's departing figure, then looked at her younger brother and asked, "Did he ask you about your master's whereabouts?" "Yes," Leng Hua replied and smiled bitterly. "Sister, I've told him." Ling Shuang paused for a moment and said, "If you've told him, then so be it. Actually, I don't feel at ease with only the master and the Yama Lord leaving. Master will be punished when he comes back later. They were not people who were loyal to the death. They knew what was best for their master. Even if they disobeyed their master's orders, if it wasn't for the fact that their own strength was much weaker than Sovereign Tong Tian and the others, they would have followed them secretly just in case. Sister, I'll go tell Hui Lang and then get ready to leave." Leng Hua said and looked at his sister. Leng Shuang nodded and watched him leave. Then she turned and left as well. On the other side, Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu, who had arrived at the Sovereign of Sky reaching through the portal, were resting by a stream in a small forest. Fengjiu looked at Xianyuan Mose and said, "Take a rest first. I'll help you disguise yourself a little." Chapter 3508. After Fengjiu washed his face, he looked up and was stunned for a moment. When he saw the familiar bearded face, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Uncle! Uncle!" Xianyuan Mose's face darkened. He tugged at his beard and asked, "Am I very old?" "Ha ha 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 ha." Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. Looking at his expression, he finally managed to hold back his laughter. "Actually, you're not old. You're just right. Moreover, compared to a pretty boy, I prefer an uncle." When he heard this, Xianyuan Mose's expression softened. He said, "I don't need to disguise myself. I'll just put on a beard to cover my face. You just have to change it a little." Your appearance. That he stared at her beautiful face and felt that she looked even more attractive after she got married. The expression in her eyes and eyebrows was especially seductive. It made him want to hide her and not let others see her beauty. Especially when he saw her come out, he relaxed a lot. Just like when he first met her, she laughed out loud. His heart couldn't help but move, and his eyes burned with passion. Fengjiu touched his face and asked, "What's wrong with my appearance?" As he spoke, he moved closer and closer. His eyes burned with passion. She couldn't help but smile and reach out her hands to push against his chest. She teased, "Uncle, we're in the little forest. The look in your eyes makes me so scared. I'm not going to eat you. His voice was a little hoarse. Seeing her smile like a flower, he was in a good mood. Are you going to sleep here tonight? Or do you want to hurry up and find a place to stay? It's not my first time sleeping in the wild. I don't mind. You'll be with me anyway, Fengjiu smiled and said, all right, wait for me. I'll put on a simple disguise. When he heard that, Xianyuan Mose sat on a rock and watched her as she busied herself. After some thought, he said, wait here for a moment. I'll go hunt some wild animals and bring them back. There's no need to trouble yourself. There's food in the space. Just make do. She pulled him and said, put on a beard. Thus, the two of them changed a little. They changed their clothes and restrained their aura and cultivation. They looked much more ordinary and inconspicuous, like an itinerant cultivator couple. This is really good. Fengjiu said with a smile. He tugged at his inconspicuous green robe and looked at the black robe on him. You look exactly the same as when I first met you. But compared to then, you're much more mature. Xianyuan Mose stroked the beard on his face and glanced at Fengjiu. I didn't think that you'd actually like this kind of thing. Ha 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 ha, that's right, I like you. What? Fengjiu smiled happily and reached out to hold his hand. She jokingly said, the uncle from back then is now my husband. Ah, I still remember that I accidentally kissed you at that time, and you directly fainted. Xianyuan Mose's ears turned red. He coughed and said, why are you bringing that up? I've already forgotten. Chapter 3509. On the mountain road, 4 carriages were stopped halfway. Dozens of black-clothed men were fighting with the guards accompanying the carriages. The carriages seemed to be filled with women and children, and there seemed to be elders as well. Children's voices could be faintly heard from the carriages. As the carriage behind them was cut in half by a horse sword and fell to the left and right, the young women and children who were huddled together inside also appeared in everyone's line of sight. Woo woo! Save me, save me! Father. The cries and shouts were chaotic amidst the chaotic sounds of swords and sabers. A middle-aged man who was fighting with the black-clothed men in front could not help but panic when he heard the cries from behind. He wanted to turn around to take a look, but in a moment of carelessness, his arm was cut by a saber. Hiss! Master! When a woman saw this, she could not help but cry out in alarm. She came to his side and blocked the saber that was slashing towards him. Clang! When the saber and sword collided, sparks burst out. Several sharp swords and sabers were slashing towards her from all directions. Even though the woman's skills were extraordinary, it was still difficult for her to deal with them. Madam, don't worry about me. Go protect the children. The middle-aged man said anxiously. He did not care about his bleeding arm that was hanging limply by his side. He used his saber to block the saber and sword for his wife while using his body to protect her as they retreated to the carriage where the children were. The woman was also anxious. Those were her children. How could she not want to protect them? However, they were separated by 2 to 3 carriages and there were dozens of black-clothed men. Furthermore, each of them was far more powerful than the guards accompanying them. At this moment, even if she could protect the front, she could not protect the back. The children in the back were protected by the guards. Although they were panicking, they were not injured. However, the black-clothed men's sabers slashed down to kill. Clearly, they did not intend to let them live. Gradually, the guards who were covered in injuries could not hold on any longer. Whoosh! Bang! A sword aura attacked and the second carriage was sliced off, revealing the unconscious old man lying inside and the people guarding the old man. Father! When the middle-aged man saw the carriage's roof being sliced off and several black-clothed men leaping onto the carriage with swords in hand, his expression changed and he immediately rushed over. Master, be careful. The woman turned her head and saw a man in black holding a sword stabbing at her from behind. She was so shocked that she lost her sense of propriety and pounced forward. The man in black was caught off guard by the pouncing, so he immediately turned the sword in his hand and held it in a reverse grip, about to stab her from behind. "Mother! Mother!" When the younger child saw this scene, he cried and pushed away the people who were protecting him and ran over. However, the child's actions shocked his parents. "No! No!" Seeing the child run out and run towards the sword without any ability to protect himself, the woman cried out in horror, her voice mournful and sorrowful. What kind of pain could be worse than watching one's own child being killed in front of one's eyes? That was something that no mother could accept. Perhaps it was because the child's life was hanging by a thread, she subconsciously struggled to get up from the ground. She didn't care about the sharp swords that were stabbing and slashing at her. She ran out and threw the child to the ground, using her body to block the killing intent for him. "Madam! Mother!" Chapter 35:10. When Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose walked out of the small forest, they saw the scene on the mountain path before they even got close. When she saw the black-clothed men brandishing their swords at the children and the woman, her eyes flashed. With a wave of her sleeve, the moment the airflow attacked, her blue figure had already rushed out. Before the sharp blades could take the lives of the mother and child, Fengjiu had saved them. The black-clothed men who attacked because of her intervention were also suddenly sent flying, heavily crashing into the trees by the side of the road. Pooh! Blood spurted out. The black-clothed men who were sent flying struggled for a while before finally lying down motionlessly. "Who is it? How dare you meddle in other people's business?" The leader of the black-clothed men's gloomy gaze swept over Fengjiu. The swords that were originally aimed at the middle-aged man were now aimed at Fengjiu. Standing not far away, Xianyuan Mose saw that these people actually dared to attack his woman. His eyes immediately turned cold. In the next moment, his figure swept out like a ghost. Except for Fengjiu, no one saw how he moved. They only knew that his figure swept past the surrounding area, and the black-clothed men fell one by one, with only a bleeding wound on their throat. As those people fell, the guards who were covered in injuries all stopped. They all looked in shock at the two people who had suddenly appeared, then looked at the dozens of black-clothed men's corpses on the ground. For a moment, they were speechless. Even the children stopped crying because of this. They stared blankly at the bearded man who came to Fengjiu's side without a trace of blood on his body. "Are you all right?" Xianyuan Mose looked at Fengjiu from head to toe. When he saw that she was not injured by the sword chi, he was relieved. Although he knew that with her strength, those people were nothing to her, but seeing her rush out like that, it really shocked him. Fengjiu glanced at him and smiled. "I'm fine." At this moment, the pale-faced middle-aged man finally regained his senses. He brought his wife and child before the two of them. "Many thanks to the two benefactors for saving our lives. Please accept the bow of my entire family." As he spoke, he knelt down without any hesitation. If it weren't for them, all of them would have died here today. Fengjiu didn't stop them from bowing. He only said, "It seems that your injuries aren't light. Quickly treat your wounds." As she spoke, her gaze moved away from them and landed on the dozens of corpses on the ground. She smiled and said, "Husband, these people should have a lot of valuable things on them. It seems that we have enough for our travel expenses." Hearing this, the corners of Xianyuan Mose's lips curled up slightly. His deep eyes were filled with adoration as he looked at her. "Then put these things away. Later, we'll find a place to exchange them for money." "Okay." Fengjiu smiled and said, "Wait for me. I'll be done soon." As he spoke, he put away all the valuable things on the black-clothed men on the ground. Not to mention the guards, even the middle-aged man and his wife were dumbfounded. The strength of these two people seemed to be unfathomable, and they even killed those black-clothed men with a single move. They originally thought that they were experts, but looking at them now, it somewhat subverted their understanding of them. Chapter 35:11. You want these things? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. No, 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 I wouldn't dare. The middle-aged man waved his uninjured hand and said, It's like this. I want to ask, are the two of you rogue cultivators? May I know where the two of you are heading? If you're going the same way, can you escort us home? The middle-aged man looked at his remaining people with a grave expression and said, I'm worried that we'll be ambushed on our way home. Now that we're injured or dead, and there are children and old people, it's really. While he was speaking, Fengjiu had already collected the things on the corpses. She didn't put them into her space, but put them in one of the people's Qianquan bags. She tossed it in her hand and walked back to Xianyuanmo's. The middle-aged man said and hurriedly said, When we return to the residence, we'll definitely thank the two of you. Xianyuanmo's didn't say anything and only looked at Fengjiu, waiting for her to make a decision. Fengjiu thought and asked, How long is the journey from here? If it's too far, we won't go. It's not far, it's not far. It's at most a day's journey. The middle-aged man said, My residence is in one of the largest cities in the surrounding area. The two of you can go there and take a look. Fengjiu looked at Xianyuanmo's and asked, What do you think? Sure. Xianyuanmo's nodded and said. Fengjiu smiled when she heard this, and she said to the middle-aged man, All right. We'll protect you. Thank you, benefactors. The woman also thanked them with the children and then went to the side to treat the wounds on their bodies. Fengjiu and Xianyuanmo's sat on the side. After their wounds were bandaged, the guards threw the corpses down the hill and repaired the carriages that could still be used. While the guards repaired the carriages, the middle-aged man went to Xianyuanmo's and Fengjiu's side. While chatting with Fengjiu, he told them his name and family, and also explained why they were ambushed this time. If we hadn't met the two of you this time, I'm afraid our entire family would have died here. The two of you are our benefactors. Fengjiu propped up his face with one hand and looked at one of the carriages. He asked casually, So, the old man in the carriage is your father, and you brought him to seek medical treatment? Yes, because this trip was rather far, I brought the children with me. But I didn't expect the journey to be so uneventful, and my father's condition didn't improve at all. Yuqingda sighed and said, The person we went to seek medical treatment from was an extremely famous doctor, but even he couldn't do anything. We could only go back and ask around about the ghost doctor. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows, The ghost doctor. The people here also knew her. Seeing the woman in green raise her eyebrows and look at him with surprise, Yuqingda explained, Madam Ling, you may not know, but the ghost doctor isn't from the Tongtian continent. I heard that she was originally from a small country in the lower realm. Later on, she came to the upper realm and is very famous. Moreover, her medical skills are very high. If she is willing to treat someone, even if they have 1 foot in the palace of the King of Hell, she can pull them back. Chapter 35:12. When Xianyuanmo's heard her words and saw her smug expression, he couldn't help but smile and nodded in agreement. She is indeed very powerful. Not only is the ghost doctor's medical skills amazing, it is said that her pill refining skills are also unparalleled. It's a pity that we are not on the same mainland as her. Furthermore, the sovereign of our world seems to be eyeing the other mainland. I heard that they are not on good terms with the people over there. Sigh. Yuqingda sighed, feeling rather helpless. To them, no matter who the sovereign of this world was, it didn't make much of a difference to them. However, if the sovereigns were to fight amongst themselves, the commoners and families of both mainlands would be implicated. I happen to know a little about medicine as well. Let me take a look at your father. Fengjiu stood up and swept his green robes lightly with his sleeves. Hearing this, Yuchengda was stunned. Before he could say anything, he saw that Madame Ling had already walked towards the horse carriage. Seeing this, he hurriedly followed and said, "Madame Ling, many doctors have not been able to find the cause of my father's illness." He didn't understand why Madame Ling would suddenly say that she wanted to treat his father's illness. Did she know anything about medicine? Previously, he had already said that his father's illness didn't improve even after visiting the most reputable doctors. How could she treat his father's illness with just a little bit of medical knowledge? He was afraid that she wouldn't even be able to diagnose his father's illness. On one hand, he was worried that she would carelessly use his father as a test subject and hurt his father. On the other hand, he was afraid that if he rejected her, she would lose face. At that moment, he was in a dilemma. Seeing this, Madame Yu walked forward and came to Fengzhou's side and said softly, "Madame Ling, old master's body may not be able to withstand the torment. If there is an accident, Fengzhou, who was staring at the old man lying on the horse carriage, was also stunned when he heard this. After thinking for a while, he understood what they meant. Thinking about how it had always been others who begged her to treat their illness, wouldn't it make them distrustful if she hurried over? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. "I know, but I just took a look. Your old master isn't sick." "Not sick? That's impossible." Yuchengda was stunned for a moment before he said, "My father's body isn't injured, nor does he have any signs of being poisoned. If it's not an illness, then what is it?" "It's the heart-eroding goblet." As Fengzhou spoke, he glanced at the old man in the carriage. "Although I haven't checked his pulse, I can't be wrong." "Goo." The Yu couple was shocked. How could such an evil thing be in my father's body? Not to mention that we have never seen this kind of thing before, even the big families in the city have probably never come into contact with this kind of evil thing. This kind of thing is an evil and ominous existence, so no one would raise an evil goblet. Fengzhou walked back and sat beside Xianyuan Mo's. Yuchengda and his wife hurriedly followed her. "Mrs. Ling, if it's really a poison, can you cure it?" "I can solve it, but it's a little troublesome," Fengzhou said. Seeing the two of them looking at her, she said, "I can't solve it now, I don't have everything I need." Hearing this, Yuchengda couldn't help but become excited. "That is to say, if we have everything, we can solve it?" "Yes, that's right." Fengzhou nodded. Chapter 35-13. He paused and looked at Fengzhou, saying solemnly, "As long as you can cure my father, Yuchengda will not dare to disobey any of your orders." Fengzhou smiled, "All right, let your people rest and prepare to continue." Thus, after the group adjusted their mood, they continued on their journey with their injuries. Because a carriage was destroyed, the children could only stay with their parents. They even freed up 2 horses for Xianyuan Mo's and Fengzhou. They did not stop along the way until the sky darkened. It was not suitable for them to continue on the journey, and the people of the Yu family were all injured and exhausted. Thus, Yuchengda, who was in front, got off the carriage and came to Fengzhou and Xianyuan Mo's. "Master Ling, Madame Ling, let's rest here tonight and continue on the journey tomorrow. Everyone is tired, I'm afraid that we won't be able to take it if we continue on." Hearing this, Xianyuan Mo's looked at those people and nodded, and, "Let's rest here." As he spoke, he got off the horse and came to Fengzhou's side to help her lead the horse and help her down. "Are you tired? Let's sit over there." Xianyuan Mo's held her hand and led her to the hillside to rest. The guards tied their horses to the side of a tree and helped the others down from the carriage. After resting for a while, some went to pick up branches to start a fire, some went to look for water, and some went to look for food. Fengzhou and Xianyuan Mo's sat on the hillside and looked at the scenery in front of them, chatting softly. At this moment, they faintly heard Madame Yu's anxious voice. "Master, what should we do? Xiaowu's whole body is hot, and his face is so hot. There's still some distance from the city, what should we do if the fever continues at night?" Yu Qingde looked at his youngest son who was being hugged by his wife, and there was some worry on his face. A child's fever could be severe or mild, and if the fever continued, his brain might be damaged. Let's cool him down first and see if there's any medicine in the medicine bag we brought along. I still have some wine here. Later, we'll use the wine to wipe his body to cool off. As Yu Qingde spoke, he asked someone to look for the medicine in the medicine bag. At the same time, he instructed the other older children, all of you stay here and don't run around. Hearing that, Fengjiu looked back and said to Xianyuan Mose, I'll go take a look at them. It's probably a fever caused by the shock. Hearing this, Xianyuan Mose nodded. Go ahead. I'll go hunt some game and roast it for you. Fengjiu smiled. Okay. She stood up and suddenly reached out to hug him. She kissed him on the forehead before leaving. Xianyuan Mose froze for a moment, then watched her leave with light steps. His dark eyes couldn't help but be filled with gentleness and adoration. He reached out to touch his forehead that was kissed, then got up in high spirits and went to find some game for his wife. Fengjiu came to the carriage and asked, What's wrong? Is a child unwell? Madame Ling, Yu Qingde saw her and hurriedly called out, It's the youngest son. He had a fever after sleeping for a while and kept talking nonsense. Fengjiu smiled and raised his eyebrows. Master Yu, did you forget that I told you that I know a little about medicine? Chapter 35:14. Lady Yu carried her son and was about to come down when she was stopped by Fengjiu. You don't have to come down. Just sit out a little. Fengjiu said. After they sat out a little, he checked the child and said, It's a fever caused by the shock. It's not a big problem. Wait here for a while. He turned and walked towards the small forest. Yu Qingde and his wife were stunned and looked at each other. Lady Yu hesitated and said softly, Master, do you think Lady Ling is trustworthy? Does she really know medicine? Yu Qingde glanced at the green figure walking towards the small forest, paused for a moment, and said, From my perspective, they should be capable people. Not to mention other things, just the fact that they were able to deal with dozens of black-clothed men in one move shows that they are not ordinary rogue cultivators. Hearing her husband's words, Lady Yu's anxious heart relaxed. She said softly, That's right. If it weren't for them, I'm afraid our family would have died on this road. She looked at Yu Qingde and said worriedly, Master, from the moment the old master fell, more and more people came to ambush us. I'm really worried. Alright, don't worry too much. Let's take care of the things in front of us first. Yu Qingde said and reached out to touch his son's forehead and held his palm. He felt that it was boiling hot and couldn't help but worry. He looked back and saw that Lady Ling was walking towards them with a bunch of herbs in her hand. Set up a fire and boil these herbs for him to drink. Fengjiu said and handed the herbs to him. With a move of her finger, she stuffed a thick pill made of herbs into the child's mouth. Yu Qingde saw this and said to his wife, It's windy at night. You and Xiao Wu stay in the carriage. I'll boil the herbs and bring them over. Fengjiu said and turned to leave when he saw that Xianyuan Mose had returned. He walked toward Xianyuan Mose who was carrying the prey in his hand. Take a seat. I'll take care of the prey. Xianyuan Mose said and let her rest on the grassy slope. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and said, I'll go pick up some branches. He then asked, Do you need me to help you with the prey? No need, I can do it myself, Xianyuan Mose said. Although he hadn't done it himself for a long time, it was still common for him to deal with his prey when he was out. Seeing this, Fengjiu nodded and walked towards the small forest. Seeing this, Yu Qingde called out to her, Mrs. Ling, let the guards pick up the branches. Sit down and rest for a while. No need, I like to do it myself. Fengjiu said without turning his head and walked towards the small forest. Not long later, he came back with a pile of branches. As night fell, the aroma of meat wafted through the mountain path. Feng Jiu and Xianyuan Mose huddled around a small bonfire, while the Yu family huddled around a large bonfire. The aroma of meat wafted through the air, causing the injured and tired guards to salivate. After filling their stomachs, the Yu family guards, other than a few who were on night watch, rested with their backs against each other. Yu Qingde and his wife took care of a few children. After they fell asleep in the carriage, they kept checking to see if their youngest son's fever had subsided. Chapter 35:15. A gust of night wind blew. He opened his eyes and glanced at Fengjiu, who was sleeping on her stomach. A trace of tenderness flashed through his eyes. He reached out and pulled the cloak covering her body higher. But at this time, a burst of laughter sounded in the night. Ha 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 ha. That voice was cold and harsh, containing a powerful pressure. Hearing the laughter echo in the night, the surrounding guards and others were already holding their heads and crying out. Ah! Hiss! My head hurts! Ah! Cries of pain and gasps rang out in the night, breaking the silence of the previous night. The children in the carriage were also suppressed by the sudden strong pressure, and they screamed in pain. The only one who was slightly better than the guards was Yu Qingde. Although his face was pale, he was still able to quickly draw his sword and protect the carriage. He shouted, "Who is it? Come out!" Clearly, although the other party's pressure caused a certain amount of damage to him, he was not like the others who could only bear with it. Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu stood up and put away their cloaks. Fengjiu heard the crying of the children in the carriage and quickly walked forward. His hands formed a seal, and a boundary blocked the pressure for the children in the carriage. That person seemed to be surprised. He slowly walked out from the shadows and stared at Fengjiu, who was dressed in green and had an ordinary face. He frowned and said, "Who are you?" His gaze swept past Fengjiu and landed on Xianyuan Mose, who was walking up from behind. For a moment, he thought in his heart. "And who are you?" Fengjiu's brows furrowed slightly. He was very displeased to be awakened from his deep sleep. This old man is someone who came to take their lives. The man's face gradually became clear under the light of the bonfire. His face was ordinary, the corners of his eyes were inverted, and there was a gloomy coldness in his eyes. At this moment, as his voice fell, his gaze shifted from Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose to Yu Qingde, revealing a strange and sinister smile. "Surnamed Yu, there are some things that even if they are with you, you don't have the ability to possess them. If you are sensible and obediently hand them over, this old man might even leave your family members with intact corpses." When Yu Qingde heard this, his lips trembled, and he was unable to say a single word. As expected, it was the fault of that thing again. Fengjiu glanced at them before turning his gaze back to the old man. He then said unhurriedly, "I don't care who you are. If you know what's good for you, leave everything behind and leave quickly. Otherwise, your corpse will be the one left behind. You're courting death." The old man's sinister voice rang out, and as he spoke, he raised his hand and sent a stream of air towards Fengjiu. Xianyuan Mose, who was standing beside Fengjiu, saw a flash of killing intent in his deep black eyes. He pressed down on Fengjiu's hand that was about to strike, and his black figure dashed forward. With a wave of his sleeve, he blocked the stream of air that the old man had sent towards him. Bang! An! Pooh! Yu Qingde stood there in a daze. He only saw Master Ling dash forward and somehow appear behind the old man. He kicked out fiercely, and the old man flew out with a groan, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Hiss! Ah! Chapter 35:16. The old man's body was on fire. Even though he could not extinguish the fire, he did not care about his image and rolled on the ground. He only stood up when the sand on the ground extinguished the fire on his body. However, he was already in a sorry state and was gasping for breath. His back was in so much pain that it reached his chest. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He retreated in shock and looked in horror at the bearded man in black who was walking towards him step by step. "You, what do you want to do?" "Kill you." It was rare for Xianyuan Mose to say something like that. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the old man was shocked. Xianyuan Mose had already condensed a stream of air in his hand and pierced through his dantian, destroying it in one strike. Death came too quickly, and he didn't even have the chance to beg for mercy or scream in terror. All he could do was let out a muffled groan, and his body swayed for a moment. His knees gave way, and he knelt straight in front of Xianyuan Mose until his head drooped, and he breathed his last in silence. Everyone in the Yu family saw this scene and could not help but swallow their saliva. They knew that this couple was very strong, but they did not expect that this old man with such strength would be instantly killed by Master Ling. Everyone was silent as if they were holding their breaths. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. Only the soft sound of the branches in the fire and the rustling of the leaves in the night breeze could be heard. The next morning, everyone set off again. However, not everyone's eyes were on the couple. In front of them, almost no one dared to be impudent. In the carriage, Lady Yu carried her youngest son who had already woken up. She happily said to her husband, "Old master, Madame Ling's medicine is really effective. Xiaowu's fever went down last night and he woke up as usual today. That's good. We have to thank them properly when we get back." As Yu Qingde spoke, he leaned against the outside of the carriage and looked ahead as if he was thinking about something. Because Fengjiu felt a little sleepy, Xianyuan Mose let her ride the same horse with him. He let her sit in front of him and sleep in his arms. His cloak wrapped around her tightly, not letting anyone see her sleeping face at all. Fengjiu, who was in his arms, slept all the way until she felt something poking at her. She shifted her hips uncomfortably, but she didn't expect to fall in his arms and hear a suppressed gasp. She didn't even open her eyes as she murmured, "What's wrong?" She shifted her body and tried to find a more comfortable position in his arms. Who knew that there would always be something pressing against her? "It's nothing. Go back to sleep." Xianyuan Mose lowered his voice, but his voice was obviously a little hoarse. Along the way, the two of them rode on the same horse. As the horse's hooves moved forward, the two of them on the horse also moved forward. No matter how good his willpower was, he still had a reaction to this kind of vague intimacy. In addition, the two of them had only been married for a few days. He, who had just tasted the ecstasy, couldn't help but feel a little restless. However, he still suppressed the restless heat that surged up. Just as he was about to move back a little and put some distance between them, who knew that in the next moment, his body would freeze. Chapter 35:17. Hiss. Xianyuan Mose panted heavily, and his ears immediately turned red. As for his face, it couldn't be seen because of his large beard. He looked at Fengjiu, who was looking up at him innocently, and whispered, "Are you trying to murder your husband?" Fengjiu's face couldn't help but turn red. She instinctively withdrew from his arms, but she forgot that she was on a horse. She almost fell off the horse because of her carelessness. "Little ancestor, behave yourself." His hoarse voice was helpless and sighed. He reached out to help her up and hugged her to his side. "Sit properly, don't move around." "I didn't move around, I was just being careless," she whispered. Thinking about what she had just done, she was so embarrassed that her cheeks burned. She looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to them. Moreover, the two of them were wearing cloaks. Only then did she feel relieved. Fortunately, no one saw them. Otherwise, it would have been so embarrassing. "Aren't you going to sleep?" Xianyuan Mose asked. He saw that she kept looking left and right, her eyes flashing and her face red. He couldn't help but find it funny. "I'm not going to sleep," Fengjiu said. She asked, "I'll go ask how long until we reach the city." As she spoke, she used one hand to support herself on the horse and the other to lift her cloak. She jumped off the horse and went forward. Seeing this, Xianyuan Mose didn't say anything. He only took a deep breath and suppressed the evil fire rising in his lower abdomen. Fengjiu, who had gone ahead, didn't return after asking. She sat in the carriage and chatted with Yuchinda. After chatting for a while, she returned to Xianyuan Mose's side. They said that we can enter the city before nightfall. When the time comes, they'll let us stay in their residence. What do you think? Fengjiu asked. She held Xianyuan Mose's hand and used it to sit on the horse's back. Anything is fine. Xianyuan Mose said. Then it's decided. We'll stay in their residence and treat their old man. At the same time, after they've settled down, we'll ask about the sovereign of Tongtian. All right. The two of them chatted casually until evening, when they really arrived at the city gate. Master Ling, Madam Ling, it's right in front. Yuchinda turned around and shouted. Seeing that they were finally home, he finally felt relieved. As they walked forward, they entered the city and followed the city road towards the Yu clan. However, Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu, who had not yet settled down, said that they wanted to go out for a walk. They turned around and left without waiting for a reply. This city seems comparable to Hundred Rivers City. Fengjiu said as he walked. He looked around and saw that there was food at a small stall in front of them. He pulled Xianyuan Mose to the front. Fengjiu pulled Xianyuan Mose to sit down and called out, "Auntie, give us a portion of all the snacks." "Good, good, good. Please have a seat and have some tea," the old woman replied. She served them tea and retreated to prepare other things. "That's lotus seed soup, right? Give each of us a bowl first," Fengjiu said as she looked at the big pot of lotus seed soup placed on the stove at the side. The old woman scooped a bowl for each of them and placed it on the small table. She then brought over other snacks. "If it's not enough, there's more. They're all homemade. Eat while you eat. The rest will be served later." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. "Okay, we understand." Chapter 35:18. They were sitting in a corner a few meters away from those people. They saw those people pushing and shoving the old woman, shouting and cursing. Seeing this, her palm moved, and a silver needle shot out from her hand, silently shooting into the leader's body. The man who was about to grab the old woman's collar suddenly stiffened and his body fell straight to the ground. The men next to him saw this and quickly went forward to support him. Big brother, why did you faint all of a sudden? Quick, take him to the clinic." When those people saw that there was no response for a long time, they did not bother to look for trouble and quickly carried him to the clinic. The old woman stared blankly and only recovered after a long time. She shook her head and sighed. While tidying up the table and chairs that were kicked over, she muttered, "What a sin. You're so good, but you don't look for work. You only know how to bully ordinary people like us." Xianyuan Mose drank the lotus seed soup and asked, "I'll accompany you to walk around the city later. See if there's anything you want to buy." "Sure." Fengjiu smiled and drank the lotus seed soup. Then, he took out 2 gold coins and placed them on the table, then got up and left. The old woman looked at the gold coins and could not help but be stunned. "The two of you, you don't need so much." "It's okay, take it." Fengjiu turned around and smiled. When she withdrew her gaze, she met a pair of eyes that were sizing her up. She glanced at that person and then withdrew her gaze indifferently. She held Xianyuan Mose's hand and left. The man who was sitting not far away looked at the two people leaving together with a trace of thoughtfulness in his eyes. Not long after, he got up and followed behind them unhurriedly. Who were Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu? With their cultivation, they were able to sense the people behind them when they were being followed. It should be the man who was not far from the stall. He probably saw me make a move, but I don't know why he's following me. Fengjiu smiled. He held Xianyuan Mo's hand and walked slowly. They didn't look back, as if they didn't know that someone was following them. Get rid of him at the intersection ahead, Xianyuan Mo said. He didn't turn around and just looked at the road ahead. The man behind them did not know that he had been discovered and continued to follow them. He was trying to guess who these two people were. However, as he followed them, he realized that the two people in front of him had disappeared. He was startled and quickly stepped forward. He looked left and right but didn't see the two figures. He couldn't help but frown. Who are those people? With my strength, how could I lose him? Helpless, he could only walk around and see if he could meet him again. Not long after he left, Xianyuan Mo walked out from a corner with Fengjiu in his arms. Looking at the departing man, Xianyuan Mo looked away and said to Fengjiu, "Let's go. Let's go to the night market." The husband and wife strolled around the night market and admired the moon. They didn't return to the Yu residence even when the sky was dark. At the Yu residence, Yu Qingde, who had settled his family down, walked around the main door from time to time, looking around and waiting for them to return. "Master, you can go in. I'll take care of things here. When Master Ling and the rest come back, I'll bring them to rest," the housekeeper said as he looked at his master's bandaged hand and couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 35:19. Master Ling, Madam Ling, you're back. Fengjiu was a little surprised to see him. "You were waiting for us?" "I wanted to wait for you to come back and bring you to the courtyard to rest. I wanted to see if there was anything wrong so that I could get the servants to prepare again," Yu Qingde said with a smile. In front of the two of them, it could be said that he had put down his position as the head of the family. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled. "There's no need to trouble yourself. We won't be staying here for long anyway. Anything will do." "How can that be? The two of you are the saviors of the Yu family. You are our esteemed guests. We cannot neglect you." As he spoke, he personally brought the two of them into the courtyard that had been prepared for them. "Master Ling, Madam Ling, I prepared this small courtyard for the two of you. See if there's anything you need to add so that I can get the servants to make the arrangements." Fengjiu took a look at the courtyard and said, "There's no need. It's fine like this. In that case, the two of you should rest early. After all, you haven't had a good rest on the way here. I won't disturb the two of you any further." He bowed slightly and then left with the housekeeper. Xianyuan Mo and Fengjiu walked into the courtyard. The two maidservants in the courtyard bowed and opened the door for them. "Prepare the water for the bath." Fengjiu looked at the two maidservants and instructed them. Then, he walked into the room. "Yes." The two maidservants replied and then left to prepare. At night, after bathing, the two of them sat on the bed. Xianyuan Mo was reading a book in his hands while Fengjiu leaned in his arms. "Mose, when do you think we can advance to the level of supreme martial artists?" The two of them were now supreme martial artists. In the world, it seemed that the strongest supreme martial artist was only a supreme martial artist. There had never been any news of a supreme martial artist being born. With their current strength, if they were to advance to the supreme being level and become supreme being experts, how much would their strength increase? It's said that there hasn't been a sovereign expert for several million years. Even if a God King expert reaches the peak, he wouldn't dare to attempt a breakthrough so easily and attempt to become a sovereign expert, Xianyuan Mo said in a deep voice, neither hurriedly nor slowly. His gaze was still on the book. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly surprised and asked, "Why?" There was once a peak-level divine king monarch who attempted to break through to the supreme being level, but unfortunately, he died. Later on, there were others who refused to believe that no one could break through to the supreme being level. They also tried to break through, but they all died one after another. Therefore, it was rumored that no cultivator in this world could reach the Supreme Being level. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly startled. He said, becoming a Supreme Being requires one to undergo the tempering of the heavenly way. Perhaps they died because they couldn't pass the heavenly way, and not because they couldn't break through. No one knows the heavenly way. As for the specific reason, no one knows. We only know that there isn't a single Supreme Being expert in this world. Furthermore, even a supreme martial artist who has reached the level of supreme martial artist cannot cultivate to the peak. Why is that? Fengjiu asked curiously. He had never heard of this before. Chapter 35:20. Ah. So that's the reason. She was a little surprised and couldn't help but think about it. If that was the case, what would happen when they reached the peak in the future? Pills won't help. She sat up straight and asked him. I've never heard of it. However, I reckon that by that time, pills won't have much effect. Xianyuan Mose said as he held her hand. Don't worry, that's for others. If it were us, it wouldn't happen. Fengjiu couldn't help but smile when he heard that. Why are you so confident? Xianyuan Mose smiled and said, because we're the Emperor Star and the Phoenix Star. We're destined by the heavens. If there's anyone in this world who can reach the prime level, it can only be the two of us. But I haven't found a way to deal with the master of the Black Lotus. That Black Lotus is very powerful. If we fight head-on, I'm worried. She frowned, worried about this strong opponent. Xianyuan Mose paused for a moment and said, logically speaking, your chaotic green lotus should be able to suppress his Black Lotus. The chaotic green lotus is a chaotic treasure and is also known as the Genesis green lotus or the cleansing green lotus. It nurtures 4 lotus seeds in the heart of the lotus, and one of them is the Black Lotus of destruction. I think that the green lotus in your body doesn't just transport life force. It should have other uses, such as suppressing the power of the Black Lotus. It just hasn't been exploited yet. Fengjiu fell into deep thought when he heard that. He murmured softly, what kind of opportunity does it require? How can it activate the true power of the green lotus in my body? Sleep. It's getting late. We'll find out in the future. He lay down on the bed and pulled her into his embrace. He pulled the blanket up and covered her with it. Fengjiu didn't think too much about it. That's right, she'll find out one day. Since that's the case, there's no need to rush. What's more, she had no clue at all. She couldn't think of anything no matter how hard she tried. Hugging the person beside her, smelling the familiar scent on his body, feeling his strong and powerful arms around her waist, her heart gradually calmed down. She found a comfortable position in his arms and closed her eyes to sleep. The next morning, after Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu woke up and ate breakfast, she wrote some things for Yuqingda to prepare. Today, they did not plan to go out, they just wanted to lie in the courtyard. After Yuqingda prepared all the things she needed, they would leave after drawing out the cup worm for old man Yu. At this moment, she didn't know that Yuqingda had personally prepared everything, but things weren't going very smoothly. In the 100 Herbs building in the city, Yuqingda had bought all the elixirs he needed. At this time, he was waiting to buy the last ingredient. Because the other party had brought the ingredients for him to look at, he first sat down in the private room and drank a cup of tea. However, after waiting for a while, the steward came in empty-handed and apologetically. Patriarch Yu, I'm really sorry. I originally wanted to bring the 1,000 blood-red heart grass over, but I didn't expect that someone would also take a fancy to that spirit herb. This. Chapter 35:21. Being interrupted, the steward's face didn't look too good. He glanced at Yuqingda before squeezing out a smile and said, Patriarch Yu, our 100 Herb building has always followed the rules when doing business. Didn't I come to inform you about this matter? Actually, the decision still lies with you. After all, you've already paid half of the price. As long as you pay the other half, this spirit herb will be yours. However, the customer said that he knows you and knows that it's the spirit herb you want. He wants to meet you and discuss it with you. Hearing this, Wuxia frowned and only said, "Bring the spirit herb here. I'm in a hurry to return." Obviously, he didn't want to meet the person he knew. This spirit herb was one of the important medicinal catalysts that Madame Ling had mentioned. Even if the other party knew him, he couldn't take this spirit herb from him. Thus, there was no need to meet him. Seeing this, the manager responded and turned to fetch the spirit herb. However, just as he returned with the spirit herb, an old man in grey robes followed behind him. "I didn't think that it would be so difficult for this old man to meet you." The old man walked in with a displeased expression and looked at Wuxia in the room. "Yang, Elder Yang. Why are you here? Why are you here?" Seeing the person who had come, Wuxia couldn't help but be startled. He hurriedly stood up and bowed to him. The old man in front of him was the famous doctor, Elder Yang. Not only was he a famous doctor, but he was also an alchemy saint. He had extremely high prestige on this mainland. Some time ago, he had brought his family to seek treatment from him. He didn't expect to see him here. The old man walked in with his hands behind his back. He glanced at the box that the manager had placed on the table and said, "This old man heard that there was 1,000 blood-red heart herb here and specially rushed over. I didn't expect to hear that this spirit herb had already been bought by you." "Yes, I was one step ahead of Elder Yang. It's because my old father is waiting for this spirit herb to save his life. Therefore, Elder Yang, I'm really sorry. I can't let you have this spirit herb," Wuxia said apologetically. If it were anyone else, it would be fine, but this person was Elder Yang. Even if he refused, he had to smile. After all, no matter who he offended, he would never offend a doctor who could save lives. Hearing his words, the old man frowned. "Your father? Who told you that your father needed the 1,000 blood-red heart grass? This 1,000 blood-red heart grass is poisonous by itself, and ordinary people are unable to refine its poison. If one consumes an unrefined 1,000 blood-red heart grass, it will be a fatal poison." As the old man spoke, he shook his head and looked at him. "You're really reckless in order to save your father. If you give this 1,000 blood-red heart grass to your father, in less than half an incense stick's worth of time, your father will be powerless to save the situation." Hearing that, Wuxia was stunned and said, "Well, I don't think so. Mrs. Ling, who helped my father, said that as long as I brought the things back, she could wake my father up. She knows medicine. Since she said so, she must have a way." Chapter 35-22. What? Madame Ling? You're saying that the person who treated your father's illness is actually a woman? When the old man heard this, he immediately glared at Wuxia, fuming with rage. Wuxia was stunned for a moment before replying, "That's right. I met Madame Ling on my way back, and we traveled together. She said that she could cure my father's illness and wake him up, so I did as she said and prepared the spiritual herbs." Ridiculous. You actually believed the words of a mere woman? That's ridiculous. He berated, glaring at Wuxia with a face full of anger. So you're saying that you think that a woman like her is better than this old man, the medicine saint? A disease that even this old man couldn't cure, but a woman like her can. And you actually believed her? That's ridiculous. Wuxia was a little embarrassed. Indeed, if he believed that Madame Ling could cure his father, wouldn't that mean that he felt that Madame Ling was better than Elder Yang? However, when he thought of the calm and confident Madame Ling, his heart was really biased towards her. After all, the couple was not ordinary people. Seeing the old man's angry expression, he knew that continuing the conversation would only make the atmosphere even more awkward. Moreover, Madame Ling was still waiting for his medicine in the residence. Thus, after some thought, he said, Elder Yang, how about this? You come back to the residence with me, and you'll naturally know what happened when you see Madame Ling. If this 1000 blood red heart herb really can't save my father, I'll give it to you as an apology. How about that? Humph. Elder Yang snorted with his hands behind his back. He also felt that there was no point in talking to him here, so he immediately said, all right. This old man wants to see just what kind of amazing doctor this Madame Ling is. She can actually cure an illness that even this old man said couldn't be cured. Let's go. Lead the way. Yuchengda smiled. After inspecting the medicine, he gave the remaining money to the steward and let him handle it. Then, he put away the spirit medicine on the table and brought old Yang back to the mansion. After sending the two out, the steward suppressed the astonishment in his heart. After watching the two leave, he turned and walked inside, thinking to himself, everyone in the city knows that Master Yu's father is seriously ill. I heard that he can't hold on any longer. Some time ago, the entire family went to Elder Yang's place to seek medical treatment, and they only returned yesterday. Now that he says that a woman can cure him, he's probably been deceived. As he walked inside, he bumped into the owner of the 100 Herbs Tower. Didn't I hear that Elder Yang came? Why didn't I see him? Tower Lord, Elder Yang went to the Yu clan. He just left with Patriarch Yu. The housekeeper said. He went to the Yu. Didn't clan head Yu ask Elder Yang to treat his father not long ago? Why did you go there again? The tower master asked in surprise. Thus, the steward quickly told him about what had happened just now. Ling, there was such a thing. Hee, that's strange. The owner smiled. At this time, another steward walked out and said, Master, Steward Lin, that Elder Yang forgot to take away the spiritual herbs that he bought. Hearing this, the owner smiled and said, since I have nothing to do, go and bring the herbs over. I'll send them to Elder Yang and watch the show while I'm at it. Hearing this, the two of them were startled. Steward Lin said, that Madame Ling that Master you mentioned might be a swindler. Why does Master have to make this trip? Chapter 35-23. The two stewards looked at each other in astonishment. Not necessarily. Could it be that the tower head had received some news? Inside the Yu residence, Yuchengda invited Elder Yang to sit in the hall before going to invite Fengjiu over. When he arrived at the rear courtyard, he saw the two people sunbathing in the courtyard. He called out, Master Ling, Madame Ling, have you prepared everything? Fengjiu asked Yuchengda, who was standing outside the courtyard. Yes, everything has been prepared. Yuchengda paused for a moment before continuing, Madame Ling, when I went to the 100 Herbs building to buy spiritual medicine, I ran into Elder Yang. As he spoke, he realized that she might not know who Elder Yang was, so he explained, he's the famous doctor we went to seek treatment from this time. He came for the 1000 blood red heart grass, but I unexpectedly bought it first, and then that he explained the matter to her and said apologetically, I really couldn't refuse. Right now, he's sitting in the front hall. Fengjiu smiled, so it's like that. It's fine, I'll go see him. She stood up and said to Xianyuan Mose, I'll be right back. Xianyuan Mose responded. After watching her leave with Yuchengda, he closed his eyes and closed them for a moment. In the front hall, Elder Yang was drinking tea. When he heard footsteps outside, he put down his teacup and looked over. His gaze naturally went past Yuchengda and landed on the green-clothed woman next to him. He sized her up and asked in an unfriendly tone, You're that Madame Ling? She looked so young, but she actually said that she knew medicine. She even said that she could treat illnesses that he couldn't. She was really going too far. Fengjiu glanced at him and smiled, That's right. She walked forward and sat down on a chair. She turned to look at Yuchengda, What about those things? Let me have a look. It was obvious that she didn't think much of Elder Yang. Her actions infuriated Elder Yang. He slammed the table heavily and roared, "That 1,000 blood-red heart grass is poisonous. How dare you say that you can give it to his father? Do you want him to die faster?" Fengjiu glanced at him and asked unhurriedly, "Who are you? Why are you meddling in my business?" Yu Qingde, who was at the side, saw that the two of them were not on good terms. Just as he was about to mediate the situation, he heard Elder Yang snort loudly, "Humph. This little woman didn't know who he was. The one sitting in front of you is the respected alchemy saint." Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. "Oh. I heard from Clan Headyu that his father's illness can't be cured." Elder Yang frowned, "So what if this old man can't cure him? Do you think you can cure him? Not only can you not cure him, but you also don't know what kind of illness he has, right? You can't even see these symptoms, yet you still have the nerve to say that you're the respected alchemy saint." Fengjiu's voice carried a hint of a smile. Her casual tone and the nonchalant expression on her face made Elder Yang angry. Elder Yang stood up angrily and pointed at Fengjiu, shouting, You're too presumptuous." Clan Headyu quickly stepped forward, Elder Yang, please sit down first. Don't be angry." As he spoke, he took out the things he had prepared and placed them on the tea table. "Madam Ling, do you think these things are all right? Is there anything else missing? You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.